Hey everyone, Grantfly here. I thought today I might do another one of these sort of review videos featuring some replays on Magic Online, this time relating to the matchup of Moneyball Black against Stiflenaught. I played in a challenge last week and I won the challenge with Moneyball Black, and I played against Stiflenaught 5 times in that challenge, so we have a lot of matches to choose from. This is the build I used. I guess I'll start off by going over how the matchup generally goes and my thoughts about it. So the matchup against Stiflenaught is one of the big reasons to play Moneyball Black if you are, you know, choosing between this and some other deck. It has a very good matchup against Stiflenaught. It's not unlosable, but it's very good. Now, the reason it's not unlosable is that Stiflenaught is kind of a fundamentally broken deck, and I think it's, and this is not an unusual opinion, I think it's the best deck in the format in pre-modern. And the reason I think it's the best deck is because it has a broken opening that basically nobody can ever beat if they draw the correct cards. And this broken opening consists of a couple islands, a Dreadnought, a Stifle or Vision Charm, maybe a Gush, maybe a foil, and maybe a Daze. There's a lot of, well, this is one of the reasons it's so good, is there are a few different configurations that can be functionally unbeatable for a lot of different decks, and it depends what those decks have in their hand, whether they're unbeatable or not. It depends what they're playing against, like which cards will be good. But the good thing about Stiflenaught's cards is that they're good against a wide variety of things, because they're basically just like free counter spells or things that protect your 12/12 from any kind of removal. The big one is Vision Charm, which can both enable the Dreadnought to stay in play, but also save it from various kinds of removal. So that's very, very strong. These cards are very, very cheap. They mostly cost 1 or 0 in the case of Gush and Foil and Daze. They also get some nice value from being able to discard Flash of Insight to foil and then get a card back with that later by flashing it back, or Accumulated Knowledge if they have that. So anyway, everybody knows Stiflenaught is the best deck, or at least a top deck. The weakness of the deck, to the extent it has a weakness, is that there's only 4 copies of Phyrexian Dreadnought you're allowed to play, and 8 copies of the enablers, and sometimes it takes a while to find a Dreadnought, and sometimes a Dreadnought player would know how often this happens more than me, but every so often you will just never find a Dreadnought, and if you never find a Dreadnought, you can't win. So that will happen, but that's the extreme scenario. But the reason it's beatable is that those kind of like in-between games where, yeah, maybe eventually they find a Dreadnought, but something has happened in the meantime to make it such that a 12/12 is no longer a game-ending threat. A 2-mana 12/12 with trample. So in those games where they don't have an immediate Dreadnought with protection, which again, most decks will lose to no matter what you're playing, in those games, Moneyball Black is pretty good against Dreadnought. And the reason is that pretty much all the cards in it serve to disrupt or put a serious clock on the Dreadnought player. So you have the suite of Cabal Therapy and Duress, both of which are very good against any deck trying to assemble 2 specific cards together, or that is just very generally reliant on particular cards. You've got Dark Ritual to help with the acceleration and try and match the speed of Dreadnought, which, as I mentioned, is extremely fast, or can be. Curse Scroll is kind of the one card that isn't very good against Dreadnought, because it's more about, its strength is killing smaller creatures over a long game, and Dreadnought generally doesn't play any creatures that die to Curse Scroll, so those aren't that good. But the rest of the cards, Chainer's Edict, Diabolic Edict, Smother, Snuff Out, these all kill a Dreadnought, so when backed with Disruption, you're often able to do that. Nantuko Shade and Withered Edge to a lesser extent, and Knight of Stromgald, if you play that, they're Grizzly Bears, they're pressure the Dreadnought player's life total, especially in Antuco Shade, which can attack for a lot. And one thing that is somewhat relevant against Dreadnought is in those games where it takes them a little bit to find a Dreadnought, if you can get them low enough, then they can't always afford to attack with the Dreadnought because then they will die on the next swing from your creatures. So getting their life total very low can sort of act as a pseudo removal spell in the sense, I mean, it doesn't remove the Dreadnought, but it keeps it from attacking you, at least temporarily. So that's why it's kind of relevant to pressure the life total of the Dreadnought player, in addition to the fact that you want to kill them anyway, but it has strategic value even beyond that. Ravenous Rats is a good card for being fodder for Cabal Therapy and disrupting the Dreadnought player's hand. They can often have enough cards where the discard doesn't matter, but sometimes it does matter. They use Gush so they can get cards back in their hand, but they also use Foil, and sometimes it can be the case that they only have a certain number of cards in their hand to pitch to foil. And then Hypnotic Spectre is it's kind of the linchpin of the deck, I would say, and it's a great threat against Dreadnought because, again, they're trying to assemble a specific combo. They also have foil, which requires them to have a lot of cards in their hands, so to use it, really. So if you're reducing that resource, that's very good. So yeah, Hypnotic Spectre is a big problem card for them if they can't race it with a fast Dreadnought, or they have to try and remove it, which in a mono blue deck, they don't have that many ways to do that, although they do have some, which we'll get to. Graveborn Muse is a pretty good way to, it's just like another good threat to resolve if the game is kind of at a stalemate, or they haven't killed you with a Dreadnought. If you do land this, you can really start to pull ahead by drawing a bunch of your other cards that are good, which I already mentioned. And Withered Wretch can mess with their Flash of Insights or Accumulated Knowledges sometimes, although in practice they can usually engineer it so that doesn't really have a huge effect. But anyway, it's a little bit of disruption that is attached to a Grizzly Bear, which a Grizzly Bear is fine against them. Bane of the Living, again, not the best card against Dreadnought specifically. It's not really why it's here, but it's a creature that can attack. The other big card to mention is Mishra's Factory, which, in addition to being pressure on the Dreadnought player, is another resource you can use to flashback Cabal Therapy, and just another threat within a land, which is useful because the Dreadnought deck has so much card advantage and selection that you kind of need everything you can get to match that. Wasteland's another card that's generally not that good against Dreadnought. Sometimes they play their own Mishra's Factories, but it seems to be pretty the standard build seems to be one that doesn't have those and just has 17 islands. And then the sideboard, you have some cards you can bring in. I don't have a ton of cards in my sideboard usually for Dreadnought because I think it is already a pretty good matchup, and I like to devote my sideboard to beating things that I don't necessarily think are that great to begin with. But I made a change recently to include Vendetta, mainly because it can kill an X1 creature while also killing, other creatures that might have slightly bigger toughness, like mainly the 2/2s out of Goblins is what I was thinking of, but it can also kill a Dreadnought at the cost of 12 life, which is a pretty steep price to pay, but if their Dreadnought dies, then it's probably worth it. Plague Bearer, this is a popular piece of technology that has become very common in these decks. For 3 mana, you can try and destroy a Dreadnought, and you can play it whenever. You can sneak in a 1/1, and it just stays in play. So that's pretty strong, and I do like it enough to play 1, but it's somewhat limited in its applications, I would say. It's very good against creature lands as well, and Dreadnought, and that's kind of about it. I don't really love it in any other matchup, although I guess it could have some utility if your opponent has a lot of 1/1s, but it's not really going to beat those decks by itself. It will need some help. I usually play an extra removal spell, so I had a Diabolic Edict at that point. Engineer Plague and Dystopia don't do anything against Dreadnought. Drain life, probably not really what you want against Dreadnought since it doesn't kill Dreadnought. And the extra grade 1 Muse, it's pretty good against that deck for the reasons I mentioned. So, and they're not really pressuring your life total that much on a even basis. It's more like, well, are you getting hit with a Dreadnought or not? But even if you are, you can always block with the Muse, absorb some power, and then, or absorb some damage, and then it won't damage you in your upkeep because it will be gone. And yeah, Torment's Grip, not worth it against Dreadnought. So that's the list. And how's the matchup go? Well, like I said, it's a pretty strong matchup for the Moneyball Black deck, but I have lost to it plenty of times because they just have, the deck's very good. So how do you, if you lose with Moneyball Black, how do you generally lose? How does the Dreadnought deck win? I found the most common way they win is by having a fast Dreadnought, basically, and they produce it quickly, and maybe at that point in the game, you only have one piece of interaction. They deal with it, and then they kill you before you can draw another. Or, if they have the God draw, then they have multiple pieces of interaction, and again, nobody was beating that draw. So that's how it usually goes. I have also lost games where that went very long. Those are less common to lose as the Moneyball player, I would say, but it can happen where they just have so many resources from gushing and maybe playing Flash of Insight. And usually this involves the Moneyball deck not really producing a clock or not a very fast clock. And then that gives the Stiflenought player a lot of time to get some card advantage and draw out of it. And, they draw more cards than we do, generally speaking. This is a matchup where Arena could be all right, although it can also be bad if you're playing Arena and then you get hit by a Dreadnought and then you deal with it. The fact that you have an Arena now in play can mean that you sometimes can't race before the Arena kills you. That can happen. So, one more reason I don't love Arena. Granted, it's still good, but I like Graveworm Muse better for that reason. There's a lot of subtle things that go into playing the matchup that aren't necessarily apparent on the surface, like how much to attack for, or like if you have the option to pump, how much to pump for, whether to what to name with Cabal Therapy, I guess, is a big one, and I guess what to expect out of the sideboard of Dreadnought. Although all their cards they don't have any really great cards against us, which is another reason why it's a good matchup. The best card in a vacuum is probably Powder Keg because it kills a lot of our threats and gives them time to continue playing the game and try and sculpt a hand where they can go off and produce a Dreadnought. I've seen players try to play Brain Freeze against me. That I don't think is a good idea. I guess it could theoretically work in a very, very long game, but it doesn't seem like a great plan because not only does the Moneyball deck empty its hand pretty quickly, but it also empties the opposing hand in a lot of ways. So building up a large storm count seems extremely difficult to me. I've seen decks play Sabo's Web. That's definitely annoying, although I have beaten it more than I usually expected to, because even though it can lock down your factories, you can still sacrifice factory to Cabal Therapy, so you can still get some value out of it. I've seen them play Essence Flare. Essence Flare can kill your creatures, so it's okay in that respect. However, it's a bit painful. If you put it on a Hypnotic Spectre, you're taking 4 and still getting hit once. If you put it on an Nantuko Shade, the Moneyball player can pump it during their upkeep, and then it will be attacking for 5 at least. And then it will die at the end of the turn, but in the meantime, it will deal a lot of damage. It can kill a Plague Bearer, obviously, so that's nice. But, yeah, and then sometimes they play control magic type effects like Dominate or maybe even Legacy's Allure. Those are good. However, they usually don't play too many of them, and your discard can hit those cards if you want. But those are all right. And I thought there was one more thing. What am I forgetting? I can't remember the last thing. Oh well. So yeah, those are the cards Dreadnought can play, and they're okay, but I don't think they do anything to fundamentally change the matchup. And And yeah, so that's about it. So we'll get into some of the replays, and I don't remember them that well, so this can be a chance to see if I agree with what I would have done, or, I think I recall at least a couple mistakes or questionable plays, maybe not necessarily mistakes that I made, but yeah, we can check those out. So if you like this kind of thing, please like and subscribe to the channel. And if by some miracle someone's listening to this who's attending Lobstercon and is thinking about not going or has decided not to go, please drop so that I might have a chance of getting in, because I'm high on the wait list, or low on the wait list, whatever you want to call it. I have a chance of getting in if enough people officially drop by this Sunday. So, not saying if you're going, obviously keep going, but if you happen not to go, please remember to officially drop. So that's it, and we will get into the replays. Yes, and I remember the last card I was thinking of that they have sometimes is Misdirection. So that's something to watch for. And I think we see that in one of these matches at some point. Okay, so I gotta click through here. All right, so this hand is, this is one of those hands that you get with Dark Ritual sometimes. So I kept this. I don't know what I'm playing against, and I just pumped out a double Ritual into Wretch Shade, and I still have Factory to play Smother. So pretty strong draw from me. They play a basic island, which I kind of like with in the position I'm in. So then I draw Rats, and I guess I have a choice here about whether to just attack with Factory or leave up Smother or play Rats. I am, if I play Rats, I lose out on the 2 damage, but I do increase my damage thereafter, and I get a card. And I get a card I wouldn't mind sacrificing to Cabal Therapy. It's possible that I should just ignore the Rats at this point, because I already have such a pretty hefty board presence, but I decide to play the Rats. So they discard a Stifle, which is possibly scary, because, that's one of their combo pieces. Means they probably almost certainly have another one of some sort, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they have a Dreadnought. So they opt, they keep it, and they opt again. So that's a big relief for me to see them opt again, because it means I'm not facing down a turn 2 Dreadnought. And they Portent, so they have a lot of selection going on. So the odds of them playing it next turn are pretty high, because they didn't shuffle with Portent, they opted a bunch. So at this point, I draw a Dark Ritual, and I have the choice of, do I hold up Stifle, or do I get in as much damage as possible, which would involve playing Dark Ritual and activating Mishra's Factory. Or I suppose I could just save the Dark Ritual and just activate Mishra's Factory and attack for 7. That would put them to 9. If I pump the Shade, that puts them to 7. If I put them to 7 and they play a Dreadnought, let's assume it stays in play. First of all, I can try to smother it, and even if I don't do that, I could attack them with, if I decide not to smother, I could attack them for 5, and assuming they block Shade, and put them to 2, and then in theory attack them again the next turn and kill them. So that was a possible play, so I decided to activate Factory and pump Shade. But it's possible I should have kept the Dark Ritual, because it would potentially help me play around Daze later, even though they could still foil or use a Vision Charm. If I don't draw land now, I don't get to play around Daze. So they take their turn, I put them to 7, they play a Dreadnought, and they stifle it. So that was kind of the worst for me, because if they just Vision Charmed it, I could have just killed them. So Vision Charm actually wasn't an out there, barring some sort of Chain of Vapor situation. All right, so I untap and draw a Graveborn Muse. That's not too helpful right now. I suppose if I had drawn, if I'd kept my Ritual, I could have tried to play that, but I don't know that that would have been that good. So at this point, I have the choice of, do I attack with everything and lose my Shade? Do I try and smother the Dreadnought? Or I don't know, something else. I mean, there's not really anything else I could do. So I decide to try and smother it, even though it's not super likely to work, but it also might work. I mean, they could have been doing all that opting and portenting just to find the Dreadnought, and maybe they don't have much else. It's pretty unlikely, because if they had to dig so hard to find the Dreadnought, you know, the rest of their hand was probably already good, and that's why they kept it, because it probably had Stifle plus some kind of disruption plus a way to dig, and it just didn't have Dreadnought. So anyway, I do go for it because I kind of think I'm sort of obligated to, but at the same time, it's possible here I should have just activated Factory and attacked in, because now if they counter this, which they do, spoiler alert, they play Daze, I can't pay for it because I used my Dark Ritual. So if I had just attacked with Factory, they block Shade, they go to 2. Now they can't really attack with Dreadnought, or I mean, now they're actually just dead on the next turn to another attack. So maybe I should have done that, but I didn't. And now, because they countered it, I can't really attack, because now I would only put them to 4. They'd eat a card, and then if I attack next turn with everything, they only go to 1. Now, granted, I suppose I could have done it anyway, and I guess the turn after that, I could attack them with 2 creatures and kill them, in theory. But I don't know, I didn't really think about that at the time. Maybe I should have attacked anyway. As it turns out, they end up playing Gush and Portent, then Gush, then another Dreadnought, and another Stifle. So now they not only have a Dreadnought, but they have it available to block. So they attack me for 12. There's no point blocking. I go to 8. They draw their card. I draw Shade, which is a dead draw, and now I'm just dead, because if I attack, they only take 5 and go to 2. So yeah, I lost because they drew a second Dreadnought. If I had done my other play, I still would have lost. Well, actually, yeah, I would have attacked them to... Wait, I'm miscounting here. I actually would have attacked them to 2. You know, if I hadn't played Smother. So then they really wouldn't have been able... They would have had to hold back with this second Dreadnought and basically like counter... Well, yeah, no, they just hold back with the Dreadnought, and then I'm still at 20, but then they can attack and force me to absorb 19 damage, and I would only be left with a Ravenous Rat. So I think I would have lost regardless. So I think the only way I can actually win this game is if I save my Dark Ritual to pay for Daze, and they had nothing else. You know, Daze was their only piece of disruption. I mean, I guess they really would have needed a foil, practically speaking, which maybe they had, maybe they didn't. I don't know. So anyway, I lost this game, and then we sideboarded for the next one. All right, so in game 2, and I should say how I've been board, how I usually board it. I would usually board with that particular configuration, take out the 2 Curse Scrolls, the Bane of the Living, and a Wasteland, I think, for the Vendetta, the other Graveborn Muse, the Diabolic Edict, and the Plague Bearer, of course. How could I forget? So yeah, I think that's how I was generally boarding. I draw this hand. This is a very, very good hand, so definitely keeping this. I lead with a Duress. I suppose there's some argument to trying to ritual out Plague Bearer and Duress, but I think it makes sense to try and ritual out the Graveborn Muse and recoup some card advantage that I would be losing, because I can probably sneak in the Plague Bearer later, and I also have Diabolic Edict, so I mean, this hand just kind of has it all. Their hand is, you know, not that strong, but obviously has a Dreadnought, so I don't really think you can... This is probably a keep. They have a Peak and a Foil, so, you know, only one of those cards really does anything, so I take the Foil. I can't take the Dreadnought, obviously, and they peek. Oh, I mean, they play a land. They're going to peek at my hand after I draw, presumably. I play a Swamp, and, you know, since they only have 1 card I don't know about, soon to be 2, but I'm definitely jamming here all the time, and if they have a Daze, they have it. So I go for the Graveborn Muse. They don't even try. They probably boarded out Daze. Oh, okay, that makes sense. So they drew Chain of Vapor. So I get my Muse chained, which is pretty annoying, but you know, it's still a 1-for-1 at the end of the day. I still have the Muse in my hand. They play their island. So I guess that explains why they, well, yeah, they would have wanted to wait till the end of the turn to peek anyway. So they play island and pass. No, okay, they decide to peek during their second main phase. Presumably because they could have drawn a portent or something and they would have wanted to play that. I draw swamp. I play swamp. I take this opportunity to get Plague Bear into play. They draw and play a portent now. They targeted me. Okay. That's, okay, I think I understand. Yeah, okay, I remember this. I think they were targeting me because they had peeked at my hand and had only seen 2 swamps, I think. So they didn't know that I already had, because they did it on their turn, they didn't see the card I drew for the turn, which was a swamp. So they don't know. It's like that meme of the people at the party, like they don't know that I'm actually, whatever. They don't know I actually have a swamp in my hand. So I actually have a swamp in my hand. So they probably are portenting me to try and keep me from drawing a swamp to play Graveborn Muse, but that won't work because I already have one. They play a land and pass the turn. Yeah, I mean, I feel like you should probably, yeah, I don't know, maybe dig for Dreadnought or support for it at that point. But anyway, I draw a Smother. So they know that I just drew this Smother, so they know at this point that I have 2 removal spells plus a Plague Bearer in play for Dreadnought. So it's like they're in a pretty bad spot here. And on top of it, I have the land, so I'm jamming the Graveborn Muse here. They impulse to dig for something. And I should say, yeah, I'm jamming this into Counterspell 100% of the time because I know 3 of their cards aren't Counterspell, so odds are they don't have one. It resolves, and I attack with Plague Bearer, and they are in a, I would say, borderline unwinnable position here because I have 2 removal spells in my hand and a Plague Bear in play and a Graveborn Muse in play that's going to draw me extra cards. So they opt. They keep the card, probably a portent, so now they portent themselves, and they don't shuffle. They go for the Dreadnought, and they Vision Charm it. All right, so at this point, I think I know their hand is 1 island and 1 mystery card, and they're going to draw another mystery card during their upkeep, but they also know about all of these cards, so not sure what's happening, but they draw. I mean, you know, they got to go for it, I guess. I draw a Swamp and a Ravenous Rats. I draw 2, oh sorry, yeah, I draw 2 cards because Plague Bearer, in addition to everything else about it, is also a zombie. So I draw 2 off the Muse, Swamp, Rats, and my last card is a Duress, which I think this is the one they didn't know about. So I Duress them to kick it off, and they concede because whatever they had planned can't beat all of this plus a Duress. I don't know how they would have possibly been able to beat all of this, but maybe they had a plan. Either way, that was game 2. All right, so they're on the play for game 3. This hand has a Therapy, a Swamp, a Ritual, Graveborn Muse, and an Edict. So it's missing double black, well, a permanent source of double black, but otherwise it's quite strong. So this is definitely a keep. They mulligan to 6. They keep 6. Play an island and pass. So I draw a Swamp, which is nice because now I have my second black source. And I play a Swamp. Now I think at this point I am going to be playing, not ritualing, just playing Cabal Therapy. You know, I don't want to wait because I have no idea if I'm about to draw a Duress, but also they could just Dreadnought me on turn 2 and then I will have felt silly waiting. Although I suppose I could use it to clear a path for a removal spell if I did that. So there could be some argument for waiting, but I don't really think so because I also have the ability to flashback therapy, and it's just useful to know what's in their hand. Yeah, no, I take it back. There's no argument for waiting because like you really want to be spending your mana on these early turns. So anyway, I'm going to therapy. So the question is, what do I name with Cabal Therapy here? The most straightforward play would be to name Phyrexian Dreadnought. That's the card that can allow them to win early. If they don't have Dreadnought, then whatever else they're doing, they're not killing you on turn 3 or 4 with a Dreadnought. Now, they could, it could be not in their hand, but on the top of their library. That's a risk. That would be probably more of a risk if they had portented turn 1, but still a risk. And the other card I think I was thinking about naming here is Counterspell to try and clear the way for my Graveborn Muse. Now, the reason this could be reasonable is that I do have a removal spell for a Dreadnought. However, it's a sorcery speed removal spell, so it won't help me if they have Vision Charm the first turn anyway, and I will be taking 12 from the Dreadnought, which is not a great place to be. The other good thing about Counterspell is that in addition to being something that stops Graveborn Muse, counters Graveborn Muse, it could also counter a removal spell. So it's kind of like clearing the way for a removal spell to name Counterspell here. Another card that I often like to name is Gush, just because I think it's one of their best cards. Foil, I probably wouldn't usually name Foil on the first therapy because, I don't know, it just feels like a better card to name on the flashback because that's when they will have wanted to get the foil into their hand or whatever, or be ready to use it, if that makes sense. So yeah, I think all of those are somewhat reasonable to name here, and any of them could be fine. The argument for Counterspell is that I have removal spell with the flashback on therapy as backup. So I have a pretty decent chance of being able to resolve my removal spell, but not like 100%. If I had 2 removal spells, I would be more inclined to name something other than Dreadnought. But I only have the 1. Plus therapy, but I would have to get the Wretch into play and sacrifice it in order to clear the path. So anyway, for all those reasons, I think I ended up just deciding to name Phyrexian Dreadnought here, but let's see. I did name Phyrexian Dreadnought, and they did not have it, but they did have 2 counterspells. So, if I'd named Counterspell, would have gone a lot better for me, but you never know these things in advance completely. So they are going to opt at the end of my turn, and they keep a card on top. So one of the opts is gone. They play their island, and they pass with Counterspell open. So the bad news is I didn't get their 2 counterspells, but the good news is I don't have to face down a Dreadnought on the second turn. So the game can continue. And I happen to draw a Duress, which, obviously I would have preferred to play that first, but I didn't know that was there. So I play a Swamp, and I just fire off a Duress, knowing that it will eat a counterspell. And unfortunately, I don't have a great follow-up play this turn, so I just pass the turn. But, one of the counterspells is out of there, which is what I would have taken, most likely. So now they opt again and put a card on the bottom, play a land. So they have counterspell and some unknown cards. I draw an Antuco Shade. So at this point, I can't quite... I could fire up the factory and flashback therapy, and then Ritual into Graveborn Muse. That does get absolutely murdered by a Daze. So I think I would probably opt to just play Withered Wretch or something and try and eat up the counterspell that way. And then next turn I can attack, then use it to flashback therapy and clear out the counterspell and try and go for Graveborn Muse. But let's see what I did. Yeah, I just played Wretch. That's, I think, what I think that makes the most sense to do. So they just counter that. So that's a fine exchange for me, I think, because if I'm choosing between whether I have Factory in play or Wretch in play, it's probably better to have Factory in play because it is a mana source, which I might want. So you can see Dark Ritual here has not actually been a card I've cast through the first 3 turns of the game. That happens sometimes, and it's not that unusual. Sometimes the cards you draw and the lands you draw, it just so happens to work out that you don't really have a good opportunity to play Ritual for much of an effect. I could have played it here to get an Antuco Shade into play, but then I don't have the mana to play Graveborn Muse, which, I don't really love that idea. So, sure, I'm only 1 land away, but one other incentive to not play the Ritual here was that I also have Chainer's Edict, so the Ritual could still do something later on in the game, as well as Antuco Shade, of course. So now they have Island. They have the possibility of hard casting a foil. I do happen to draw the land. So let's see. So now I could actually use Shade, and if that gets countered, play Graveborn Muse. I would still be vulnerable to Daze, but okay, so yeah, this, I play that and then it gets foiled, and I think here I go for it and try to play Graveborn Muse. And it does resolve. They don't have a Daze. I guess I should clarify, the reason I didn't do that the turn before wasn't to mainly to play around Daze, since obviously I'm not playing around it here, but just to mainly just to keep my factory, because I thought I might need it to, for example, cast a 2-drop and a 4-drop in the same turn. So plus it's just a good attacker. So they untap, play a land, and pass the turn. I start drawing off Graveborn Muse, and at this point I have a huge advantage over them. I go ahead and jam Hippie, because why not? They happen to have another hardcast foil, so my Hippie gets countered, but not a huge deal since I'm drawing extra cards every turn. Get in with Factory and Muse, and it won't take a ton of attacks like this until they can't really win with Dreadnought anymore, and they do only have 1 card, so they really needed to find a gush at some point here, and they haven't found it. They just draw and pass. I draw Dark Ritual, and then I draw Ravenous Rats, so I go ahead and play the rats. They probably they discarded Brain Freeze, yeah, so that's not an ideal thing for them to have in their deck. I get in with Factory and Graveborn Muse. They go to 10. They draw, and what happens? After thinking for a bit, they pass the turn. I draw again, another Graveborn Muse and a Rats. I play Rats. Every turn that has passed without them either gushing or assembling their combo while I have Graveborn Muse in play, their chance of winning has gone dramatically downward. They have to counterspell Rats, and I can use this opportunity to get out of Graveborn Muse. Attack with Rats and Muse. They are at 6, facing down lethal, and also I get to draw 4 extra cards next turn. They peek at my hand and play a flash for 1. That's not going to do it, and that is the game. So yeah, this is one of those games where my opponent just dug and never found the Dreadnought, never really found, I don't think they had, well, they might have had one of the enablers in their hand, I don't know, but yep, it's one of those games. All right, let's check out the second match. I lose the roll, and I open with this hand. I don't know what I'm playing against, but this is a good hand against pretty much anything. Has Duress Cabal Therapy, has one of my swamps that I would want. They open with a peak, so that puts them on Twin almost for sure. Or sorry, not Twin. Stiflenought. I'm getting confused because their name is Mr. Twin. And I guess Stiflenought plays a little bit like Splinter Twin did. So I draw a Wasteland for the turn. Not the greatest draw, but my hand was already good, so it's probably fine. I lead with the Duress. I see this hand of Counterspell, Foil, Double Dreadnought. So yeah, that's pretty tasty. I'm gonna have to sweat for a turn. I take the Counterspell so that I can potentially Cabal Therapy away 2 Dreadnoughts next turn. They draw, play an island, pass the turn. So possibly they have drawn a Counterspell, but I literally have no other play anyway. So and I drew the Factory, so that's actually kind of nuts because now I can guarantee that I hit. So I lead with the Therapy. I play the Factory first just because if they drew Daze or something, there's no real reason to get my Therapy dazed, and concealing the Factory doesn't really accomplish anything. So I just play it, and I Therapy. They foil. I think this was probably, well, right. So they foil pitching Island. They drew Island. And I guess if I hadn't played the Factory, this could have made some sense. So they drew Island for their turn. They pitched Island. I guess that could be a reason to not play the Factory, but again, I don't think it's better than playing around Daze, so I think it was reasonable to play it. But since they knew I had Factory to flash it back, I don't totally understand why they did this, because it's like very easy decision for me to just activate the Factory and get their last 2 cards, which I know are both Dreadnought. So I do that, they're gone. I lose my Factory, but it's, they just lost 5 cards, so it's pretty worth it, I would say. They draw, pass the turn. I draw a Smother, play a Wasteland. It is a little annoying that I can't play any of my creatures yet, but obviously I'm still in a very good position. Play my Scroll, they Portent. So yeah, if they hadn't foiled my thing, they would still have a foil, which I know about, so I can take it whenever, but would also have some islands. Now, what are those islands doing? I don't know. Maybe not that much, but yeah, so I mean, from their perspective, maybe it's worth it just to see if maybe I won't flash it back. I guess there is a chance that I might not have, but just sorry, still thinking about that because it's kind of the only interesting thing that happened in this game. Spoiler alert. They just draw a card off their Portent. I draw a Factory, still no second black, but Factory's decent. Let's see, did they shuffle? They did not shuffle with Portent, so they liked what they saw. I could dismiss all those. There's no more knowledge of their hand. They draw and pass the turn. I have the option to scroll at the end of turn, but since my odds of hitting are so low, I decide that concealing the information in my hand is worth more than a quarter of a chance at 25% chance at 2 damage. I draw a Chainer's Edict and get in with Factory. They take 2. They draw and pass the turn. So they are back up to 4 cards now. I haven't really been able to play any of my cards and pressure them. Yeah, this whole kind of thing does make me question whether the Wasteland, I mean, usually the Wastelands are pretty good, but every once in a while something like this happens where you just don't have enough black mana to play your stuff, and that's annoying when it happens. I get in with Factory again, draw another Smother. So I have all these removal spells, but I don't really have the mana to play all of them. But, they lost 2 Dreadnoughts, so they're pretty far away from being able to do it again, probably. They tank for a while and decide to go for a Gush. That explains why they were thinking, because I'm not sure if it's the right time to do it. They draw and Portent themselves. They don't shuffle, then they opt. They take the card with opt and pass the turn. Then they draw their other card. I draw for my turn, it's a Duress. So I go ahead and Duress, and I see Gush, Daze, Flash, Counterspell, Misdirection. So what would I have taken here? I am assuming that I probably take the Gush, since I think that is the route through which they could maybe build up enough cards to go off with enough protection to get through all of my stuff. And since I have 3 removal spells, I have answers to, they really only have 2 ways to stop my 3 removal spells, so I should be okay. That's the theory anyway, and they are 2 pieces away, not just 1. So I'm going to guess I took Gush here. Let's see what I did. I took the Misdirection. Interesting. I guess the motivation to do that is that I do eventually want to play one of these creatures, and if I do, then I don't want them to misdirect my Chainers or Smother onto my Hypnotic Spectre or my Shade. And I don't know if I can play them in the near future, so they might get some time to set up to be able to do that. That's an interesting choice. I don't know. If I were doing this again, I might have taken Gush. But I didn't, so let's see how it turns out. I mean, I know how it turns out, but you will see. Activate Factory and attack and pass it back to them. They play an island, and I untap and draw Spawning Pool. A little awkward here, but hey, it can attack for 1 later. I activate Factory and get in and pass the turn back after playing Spawning Pool, of course. They take their turn. They play an island. I forget now how many islands they have. I think that's the last island I know about. So their hand is Gush, Daze, Flash, Counterspell, and there's the Dreadnought. Okay, so their last 2 cards were Stifle Dreadnought, pretty good, but they did play a bunch of Ops Importance and stuff, so they have that. So now, taking the misdirection's looking kind of good because they cannot misdirect a Smother, or sorry, if they had Misdirection, I didn't have a creature in play, so if I play Smother, they can't really misdirect it to anything. They can misdirect a Chainer's Edict, but again, I wouldn't have a creature in play, so it wouldn't do that much. All right, so I play Swamp, and I'm assuming here I just try to. All right, let's think about this. I could wait till their turn. So we know they don't have misdirection. So they would have to have, and they don't have mana for counterspell. So they would have to have either, to save their guy, they would have to have either Vision Charm or they will need foil plus something, either a Vision Charm or it might have to be just that. I guess double foil could do it, or another misdirection. No, misdirection won't work because, right, we discussed that Smother has no other targets. So it's really just those two. However, I can't play all three right now because of the daze, because the last one will get dazed. So it's a little awkward for me, but I think I probably just end up going for it and playing like Chainers and then Smother when that doesn't work. But let's see what I do. Yeah, I kick it off with a Chainer. They respond with Gush. I should probably Smother in response here. Well, no, that's not true. There's not really any reason to. I could just let them, because then if I do and they draw a foil, they won't like waste any cards trying to counter this first removal spell. So yeah, no, that makes sense. I let them Gush. And then, if they have two removal spells, I still can try again the next turn. But they have 0, so they have to sacrifice their Dreadnought, and I can try and play a Hypnotic Spectre, which resolves. And from this point on, they are in serious trouble, and they concede the game. So game 2 of match 2. There we go. So they play first, they play an island. I have, this is my opening hand, which I kept. Swamp, Ritual, Hippie with 2 removal spells. Pretty nice draw. They lead with a Portent and do not shuffle. I draw another Edict. Lead with a Ritual, play a Hippie. It resolves, so they're immediately under the gun here. They don't have a turn 2 Dreadnought. So here's something interesting. I mean, normally in the abstract, it's better to play Rats first before hitting with Spectre, because the opponent will then discard their least important card, and you will have a higher chance of randomly hitting one of their other better cards. I think that makes sense. I guess the argument against it would be, I don't know. Yeah, it seems like in general it's better to play the Rats first. However, I don't do it here. I don't know, I guess, am I thinking about holding open a removal spell? I'm not sure really why I would. Maybe I just want to see, and if they bounce it, I can't really replay it. So yeah, I don't know. I probably should have played Rats, honestly. I guess I could discard a Daze from them that they might have been able to use to counter Rats, or a counterspell if they really want to use it on a Rats, which they probably wouldn't. But maybe Daze specifically I could hit. So I guess that's the logic. So I do hit them with it. They discard an Impulse, and then I play the Rats. They opt in response, and they opt again, putting one on the bottom and one on the top. Now they discard for turn, or discard to the Rats, discard an island. So yeah, there's probably a little bit of a mistake there. I probably should have Ratsed first. They play Sabo's Web, which is often very, pretty good against us, but in this case, it is not doing anything. I draw Graveborn Muse, or not doing anything yet, anyway. Draw Muse, get in with my creatures. Do they have a chain for my Hypnotic Spectre? Nope, so they discard a foil. I play a Swamp and can't do anything, so I pass the turn. Okay, so yeah, they're down to 3 cards. They have to just go for it here as soon as they are able. But as you can see with our hand, their chances of succeeding are pretty low. So they have, they're playing Dreadnought. I wait to see what they play off it. They play Vision Charm. So at this point, the question is, how would I lose this game? If I go to kill it or something, they could Gush into foil potentially, or they could try and misdirect it to my Spectre. But even if they do that, I still have the ability to kill it on their upkeep with my other instant speed removal effect. So I probably should have just tried to Edict this in response, but I'm not sure if I did that, because maybe I was tempted to get in one more hit with the Spectre. before doing it. But I think that wouldn't be a great idea here. Let's see what I did. Okay, I did go for it. I must be confusing this with a different game. So yeah, I go for it. Go for the Edict in Response, which I think is correct because of what I just said. Like, there's really no reason to risk getting hit once with a Dreadnought if you don't have to. Or, you know, I have the 2 instant speed removal spells, so there's really no reason to risk it in that way. And yeah, so they conceded that. So not that fascinating of a match, but back for the third one. Okay, so this is the third match. I keep a hand. I do know what this player's playing because they always play Dreadnought. So, I mean, I guess I don't know for sure, but it's highly likely that that's what they're playing here. So I have some knowledge. I keep this hand. It's not like the most amazing hand ever, but it does have Duress, which is pretty strong against Dreadnought, and it does have Shade, which is also quite good. The scroll is not great, but I don't think this is a mulligan. Like, if you're mulliganing this, I think you are probably mulliganing too much. That's my opinion. So I Duress here, and I see double Vision Charm, Counterspell, Gush, Impulse, Foil, 1 island. So this hand is actually pretty good because, yeah, the only thing it's really lacking is the second island. It has a lot of card advantage. It has 2 Vision Charms, so I can't really cut them off of it. But I do have the ability to sneak in and to go Shade under all of this stuff. So I think probably the plan against this hand is to sneak in Shade and hope it takes them so long to draw a Dreadnought that by the time they get it, it's like too late. So given that, I think it makes sense to take either the Impulse or the Gush. I always lean more towards taking Gush because I just think it's a more powerful card and it enables things like foil. But let's see what I did. I did take the Gush. Yeah, I mean, you could make an argument for taking Impulse because it sees a little bit deeper, but I feel like Gush is the better card. All right, so they play Island. So they now have those cards in their hand. I draw a Swamp, play Shade. They drew Dazed for the turn, so it gets Dazed, which is annoying, but it also, I mean, it's good for them because it buys them some more time, and they don't have another land, so why not Daze? But fortunately, I do have a second Shade, so it's not the end of the world from my perspective. They play an Island. I draw another Swamp, play Shade. This is why, incidentally, this is why I like playing multiple Shades, because if they kill one or counter one, you'll have another. Now, if I was playing Knight of Stromgald or something instead and I led with that, they probably still would have Dazed it because they had nothing else to do with their turn and they weren't guaranteed to draw another island, and it's a threat of some sort. So I guess if you are playing Knight of Stromgald, it's good to note that you might want to lead with that if you're worried about getting hit by a Daze. On the other hand, I know they have Counterspell too, so that would be an incentive to lead with the Shade to try and get it in under Counterspell. So that's why it's nice to just have a bunch of Shades, and then you don't have to make choices like that. You can just play your awesome card over and over. So I land the Scroll as well, because why not? It's going to be most likely totally irrelevant this game, because all the mana is going to be better spent diverting into pumping Shade, but still. Okay, so they miss on a land. Not great for them. I have Smother. Now, okay, this is actually an interesting decision. So, I'm faced with the choice of, do I pump everything into Shade, or do I leave up 2 mana to try and smother a Dreadnought if they have it? Because currently it's pretty clear they don't have a second island, so their foil isn't really going to be turned on, and they can't protect it with Counterspell. But if they do draw an island and go Dreadnought, Vision Charm, then it'll be gone on my turn. If I try to smother it during their upkeep, they have another Vision Charm, B, they have a Counterspell. So it'll be quite well protected if it gets to survive to that point. But it's not very well protected if I just if I smother it the turn they're going for it with only 2 lands. On the other hand, if I pump everything into shade and just assume they don't have one yet to go with their Vision Charm, this is getting in for 6. And then if I do it again next turn, it's 7, 13. So that puts them to 7. And so they would basically be dead, because if they use Vision Charm, the Stifle Knot cannot block. So yeah, this turn plus next turn, because if they Vision Charm it, it'll be gone next turn. They'll basically untap with the Dreadnought at 7, and then at that point, they can't really attack because they will die on the crackback. So I think for that reason, that motivated me to pump everything into the shade here. But let's see what I did. Whereas if I don't pump it, then they aren't actually dead on the crackback. So, or, you know, on the next swing. Yeah, so I sent everything into the shade. Let's see if they drew a land. They did not. So, you know, it didn't end up being relevant, but that was kind of the thought process on that decision. So, and they concede the game without a land. Okay, so they're on the play this game. They keep. This is my opening 7. 4 lands of ritual, 2 removal spells. This is probably a hand I should mulligan. Yes, it has 2 removal spells. Technically, it has a land that could do something in Spawning Pool and some acceleration, but we don't really have anything to accelerate into. So it's essentially a 5-land hand. Now it does have, you know, it has some of the cards we would want against Dreadnought, but this is the kind of hand where they can basically potentially grind you out because you have no pressure. And, you know, it's just very, very threat light and spell light. So this probably should have been a mulligan. I think I kept, yeah, I did end up keeping this hand. I think I remember when I was keeping, I was thinking, you know, should I really keep this hand? I don't know. Let's try it. Let's see what happens. So just to get some more data points. So let's see what did happen. They play an island and lead with a Portent. They don't shuffle. I draw Duress, which is a very good draw. I mean, anything that isn't a land would be a good draw at this point. I Duress them, and I see Flash, Opt, Essence Flare, Counterspell. So they kept a pretty slow hand as well, but that actually probably favors them, because if they had like a quote-unquote jam hand, then my hand's actually pretty well set up against that. But if they have more of a grindy hand, my hand is not that well set up. So I am assuming I probably just took Counterspell here because I have no threats that the Essence Flare would do anything against. And Counterspell is kind of the more flexible card. And yeah, that is what I did. But that Flash of Insight is going to be a problem. They Portent, they don't shuffle. So I know their hand is getting better by the turn. I draw a Wasteland, which is not good. I go ahead and play the Spawning Pool. They Opt and keep one on top. So that's gone. They play a land and pass the turn. So I think that's all the lands that I know about. I draw Therapy. So, you know, I could Therapy Essence Flare here, but I think I'm guessing I hold this because there's no real reason to play it yet. Yeah. If I draw a creature I really want to protect, then I can play Therapy on Essence Flare. But it's possible I want to Therapy something else if they get a Dreadnought and I need to like try and make sure I kill it. They play a Flash for 1 to get it in their graveyard and replace it. And they draw and play a land and play a Sabo's Web. So that's pretty good, pretty annoying. My Spawning Pool was never going to get in for much, and now it will not get in for more than 1. I draw a Swamp, play it, pass the turn. They Impulse at the end of the turn. They just play a land and pass. I draw a Diabolic Edict, play land and pass. So my hand has a ton of removal, but no threats. At the end of the turn, they what are they doing? Oh, they're casting another Flash of Insight, I think. Yep, there's another Flash, this time for 3. So they have 2 flashes in their graveyard. Pretty strong, especially against the kind of hand I have. They draw, play a land, pass the turn. I draw a Swamp, play it, and pass the turn back. And they go ahead and flash back Flash of Insight for 5. And now they're back up to 7 cards in hand. and they decide to go for it. So they play Dreadnought and they stifle it. I decide to, yeah, I mean, if they're stifling, there's no real reason to respond. I think my intention is to play a therapy and try to do that first before playing a removal spell to try and make sure that it works. I draw Graveborn Muse, which is a pretty nice draw actually. Play a Wasteland, and now I fire off a therapy, I'm assuming, and at this point, what do I name? I don't think I need to name, I mean, I could name Essence Flare just to guarantee hitting a card, since it's kind of unknown what will work, and I do have a bunch of removal spells. At the same time, they have Dreadnought, so they're probably not playing that unless they have some kind of protection for it. So the prime candidates to name are Counterspell and or Foil and or Gush, or even Vision Charm too. They've gone through one Counterspell, but the rest of those cards are all possibilities. So it's kind of a crapshoot what to name at this juncture, and they still have the Flash of Insight they could use. So if I were doing this now, what would I name? Which I basically am because I don't remember what happened here. I'm tempted just to name Gush because they haven't played one yet, and it is, I think, the kind of card they wouldn't want to play in response because that just increases the percentage chance of me hitting a different card. So I might name Gush. Let's see what I named. Looks like I named Essence Flare, which is defensible just to guarantee I hit something. But yeah, in retrospect, I probably should have named Gush. Because the Essence Flare actually doesn't really do anything against the Graveborn Muse. Like, it can eventually kill it, but it's not a very good answer to it, and that happens to be the card I drew. Anyway, our hand's pretty damn good. It has Vision Charm, Gush, Stifle Foil, and Essence Flare. So I get the Essence Flare, which is cool, but it's not really addressing the main problem, which is this Dreadnought. So yeah, that was certainly a mistake by me, I think. So now I activate the spawning pool and I can flash it back to get rid of one of their things. So I do, I'm assuming I would name Gush here if they don't Gush in response, which I'm sure they will. Yep, there's the Gush. So now I don't really want to name Foil because if they want to alt cast a foil, I'm cool with that. If they want to tab out for foil, that's also fine. So I probably name Vision Charm here, since that saves the Dreadnought just as well. No, I named Foil. Yeah, I mean, I guess the argument there is that I can Vision Charm on their upkeep, and if they use it, then I save some damage. However, turns out they also have Counterspell now. So I get rid of the foil, and now I guess I'm going to try and play 2 removal spells. Or am I going to try and play a removal spell and a Graveborn Muse? Not sure. What is the plan here? Okay, I'm going for Chainer's Edict. They Vision Charm that, and then I try to smother it in response. Oh, no, right, I have enough mana to play all 3, so I guess that is what I'm trying to do. So they do that, then they counterspell. Right, and then they don't have enough mana to also play Flash. That's the logic here, which makes sense. So they counterspell that, and then I Edict them, and they don't have a counterspell, and they can't use Edict to look for one. So after all that, their Dreadnought does die. My Wasteland is tapped down, and I have only a Graveborn Muse left, but I think the plan is hopefully use Muse to pull ahead. So they go ahead and flash for 6 now and pick something. I draw Plague Bearer. So this is pretty nice. I have Plague Bearer and Graveborn Muse. I think it makes sense to try and resolve the Graveborn Muse here, but I could see the argument for Plague Bearer because it is kind of game over for them if it resolves. But I think my reasoning here was resolve the Graveborn Muse and start drawing cards, and then you'll be able to draw into some cards that can ensure Plague Bearer hits play. Whereas if I play it now, they could have drawn a counterspell or whatever to counter it. So, and it's a little bit more mana efficient too to play Graveborn Muse here while I can. So I do play the Muse. and they impulse, and it resolves. So now it's their turn. They have a Dreadnought, and they have a Stifle, which I did know about the Stifle. So, and now they have another Dreadnought and a Vision Charm. So that's pretty good recovery. And I believe I know that their hand is just an island after that. So I'm facing down a lot. Obviously, I wish I had Resolve Plaguebearer while I could. I draw a Wither Edge for my turn. And here I just make a foolish mistake, which is that I forget that Plaguebearer costs 3 to kill a Dreadnought. I'm used to it costing 1 to kill a manland. So I make the foolish mistake of playing this Rats first and then playing Plaguebearer, thinking I can still activate and kill one of the 12/12s. And I also think I had I had lost track of how many islands were in their hand, and I thought maybe their last card could have been a counterspell. So that's why I played this Rats first. But obviously this was a horrible idea. If I just play Plaguebearer, like I should know that this card remaining is a land, and it was. So if I just play Plaguebearer and use it, I still have enough mana, 3 mana, to kill one Dreadnought. And then the next one can attack. I can go ahead and block with the Muse and absorb some damage and then just untap. And unless my opponent draws exactly Stifle or Vision Charm, I can kill their other Dreadnought. And then the game is basically over. However, I don't do that. And then I realize my mistake afterwards, reading Plaguebearer again, and realize that I have messed up and lost the game. So this game should have been a win, but due to my misreading of Plaguebearer, it was a loss. All right, so game 3, I'm on the play. I draw a hand of Therapy, Ritual, Rats, 2 Swamp, 2 Factory. I think this is a keep. It's not like the greatest hand ever, but I don't think it's a mulligan because it has Therapy, which is a pretty important card, and it has Ritual, which can give us the option to accelerate out a Hypnotic Spectre if we draw it. Therapy, I think with the hand being what it is, I have to just name Dreadnought here to try and prevent myself from getting immediately Dreadnoughted. I mean, actually, I suppose I take it back. There is an argument to name something like Portent with this first Therapy to try and kind of like slow down their ability to assemble the full complement of cards they would want in their hand, because I do have the Rats to flash back Therapy and try and hit the Dreadnought if I see one. And even if they somehow counter the Rats, like if they counter the Rats with the Daze, I have Factory to try it again the next turn. If they like foil the Rats, then they could get me, but they would have to have a very, very good draw for that to happen, because they would be on 1 land. So let's see what I did. I think I just named Dreadnought, yeah. And if I had named Portent, I would have whiffed anyway. But they don't have Dreadnought. They have 2 Stifles, Gush, Flash, Counterspell, 2 Islands. Pretty good hand. So I pass it back to them. And at this point, I will say I didn't necessarily love my chances here. Well, no, that's not true. I mean, I do have the Rats to get their Stifles and try and prevent a fast Dreadnought, but this is the kind of hand they could grind me out with, because they have Gush and Flash to get some card advantage. So they play Island and pass. I draw Wasteland, and I play a Rats with Factory, so I can start getting in. They let it resolve, and they discard Flash, which, yeah, that makes sense. It's pretty free for them to do that. And I don't flash back the Rats right away. This is actually, this is a pretty risky play for me. I mean, of course, they don't have any dig, but they could try and Gush into Stifle plus Naught. So this was a pretty risky thing for me to do, to not flash it back right away just to get the 1 damage. Now that I'm looking at this, I'm struggling to understand why I did that. But because I know they have the second Island and Stifle, and I have no way to kill a Dreadnought. Maybe I'm just assuming they don't want to go for it without protection, so I can get in 1 damage, which turns out it worked, but it also kind of didn't work because now they can counterspell my flashback. Okay, so I get in for 3 with the factory and the rat, and 1 more with the rat. And then, am I not playing it still? Yeah, I guess I still am not. I mean, at this point, there's no real reason to, because they can just counter my therapy. So, yeah, I just let it go. So I guess the logic is to leave them the stifles and try to hope they don't hit anything, hit the Dreadnought in time, and I can just beat them to death with my rat and 2 factories. It's a bit of a risky line. I understand why I did it, but I'm not sure it was a great idea in retrospect. Probably should have just sacrificed the rats to hit stifle when I played it. All right, yeah, they don't have this island. So now they have a gush in hand. So this is the turn they could go for it. And they do have an island, but looks like they don't feel like they're under enough pressure, so they don't go for it. I draw a swamp, and I activate my factories and get in for 5 damage. So, it was risky to not sack the rats, but the extra damage is kind of adding up. So I get in for 5, and now it's their turn. It looks like they are ready to gush now. So they do cast that. They play an island. They play an impulse. They continue to dig. And they play a portent. So they went through a lot of cards and did not find a Dreadnought. And they choose to shuffle. So they're still digging for a Dreadnought. It's pretty clear. But now they did put a bunch of cards in their graveyard for Flash of Insight. So their odds of finding it the next turn are quite high. They draw off portent, and now I can choose to try and land a Graveborn Muse. So this is the other interesting decision of this game, because I could use my ritual to try and land Graveborn Muse and still get in with Factory and Rat for 4. They do have 8 cards in hand because of the portent. So now they have an option to counter Graveborn Muse. So I could play Graveborn Muse, get in for 4, or I could not play it and get in for 5, which puts them to 6. Either way, they're not quite dead to attacking with my creatures twice. So given that being at 6 doesn't seem like it does enough, I probably would play the Muse here and force them to have an answer. But let's see what I did. No, I didn't do that. Okay. I guess I just got in with Factory. That's pretty bold. Because, yeah, if they play a Dreadnought here, I still can't really... I can get in with the 2 factories. They block 1 and go to 3. And then I guess they can't attack me after that. So it's pretty safe. Yeah, I guess getting in the damage is probably correct now that I'm thinking about it, because it functionally keeps them from attacking me. Whereas, see, if I only put them to 7, they play a Dreadnought. I mean, let's say I play this and they counter it, then they can block, go to 4, attack me once, go to 1, and attack me again. So yeah, I guess I was wrong. There is a difference between 6 and 7, and it's pretty significant. Now, of course, if the Muse resolves, it's a different story, but this is all predicated on the idea that they might counter the Graveborn Muse or be able to foil it or something. So they play an island and they gush again, continuing to dig. And what are they doing? Are they just Flash of Inciting? No, they don't bother digging with Flash because they know it won't really do anything. So it seems like in this case, they just never found the Dreadnought, probably. But yeah, I guess the interesting part of this game was whether to play Graveborn Muse there or just get in with Factories. And I think, upon reflection, I think I probably made the right choice to get in with Factories. Now, the other thing was, should I have just flashed back Therapy earlier, sacrificing my rats to get rid of double stifle? That probably would have been the more responsible thing to do. But I don't know how this game would have turned out if I would have done that, because they did end up drawing a bunch more cards and probably didn't end up needing that stifle, whereas the 3 damage, I think, could have been relevant in this race. So anyway, that was an interesting one, and we are now 3-0 in this tournament with, or 3-0 against Dreadnought. Okay, so here's round 4. I don't think I know what I'm playing against here. This hand is, or maybe I looked it up, I can't remember. This hand is a little iffy, especially I'm on the draw. It actually is better on the draw because then I'll have some idea of what I'm playing against. I don't know. I think this hand's probably a mulligan. It's just a bit too clunky and I don't have a second land, so the scrolls are not even going to be that good for a while, even if I am playing against something where they could theoretically be good. Yeah, I did mulligan. Okay, this hand is a lot better. I'd probably put back either the Shade or the Smother. Let's see what I did. I put back Wretch. Okay. I guess Wretch has high upside, but Shade can also sort of single-handedly win the game potentially. So, all right, they lead with an island. So if I didn't already think they were playing Dreadnought, I certainly do now. I kick it off with a Therapy, and here, yeah, I mean, well, this is an interesting spot because I have 2 removal spells, so I could potentially get through a Dreadnought if their draw isn't super insanely good. So I could see naming just Counterspell here and trying to resolve my Shade next turn. And Counterspell also protects Dreadnought, so it's kind of a two birds with one stone kind of thing. Or I could see naming Gush. Let's see what I named. I named Counterspell. And they have Phyrexian Dreadnought, 2 AKs, and a foil. So they're building for a slower game here. Obviously, at this point, I'm regretting putting my Wretch on the bottom, although actually they could still play both AKs before I could activate Wretch, so it's not that relevant in this case, I guess. So they play their island and pass. Probably going to play AK at the end of the turn. I draw Rats, and I probably just jam Shade here. Yeah, because that way if they want a foil, they have to do it with cards that they might want. I mean, yeah, foiling. It would be kind of tempting for them to foil here, but I get why they don't, because they want to protect their Dreadnought, and that probably is correct. But it's a little tempting because they could just discard one of the AKs and then get the 2 cards off the other one. But instead they play AK, so one of those is gone. And then the Rats was actually a pretty good draw for me because now I have a perfect item of fodder for flashing back Cabal Therapy. All right, so they drew something for the Dreadnought. They play Dreadnought, and they play Vision Charm. Now that I'm looking at this again, it is a little odd that they didn't wait a little longer and try to play AK first. But I don't know. Maybe it's better to just jam. Okay, so their Dreadnought's gone. They have 1 card I don't know about. I suppose since it's phased out, they can always AK in response, so they'll still get to draw some cards, in response to a removal spell of mine in their upkeep. Okay, so I probably just play Rats here. Yeah. I could play a land to play around Daze. That might have been a better thing to do, actually, because the spawning pool is probably my thinking in not doing that is to get spawning pool into play, but it's probably not. This game probably isn't going to come down to whether I have spawning pool in play or not. It's probably going to be, do I kill this Dreadnought or not? So I probably should have played Swamp just to play around Daze there. So they discard an island. And actually, no, I take it back because if they Daze the Rats, that's probably okay. Because I'm not actually going to get to attempt to kill the Dreadnought until the next turn after, since I decided to do it this way, to play Rats instead of trying to smother, which I think is correct. So anyway, I flashback Rats, planning to name. I would probably try and name Accumulated Knowledge here, actually. No, never mind. That's ridiculous. Yeah, I would name Foil. So let's see. No, I do name Accumulated Knowledge. Okay, that's a little... in retrospect, that's probably not a great idea. The logic, I guess, is that Foil isn't really going to do much if they can't draw any cards. But the risk is what you see before you, which is that they could have a Gush and now their Foil is turned back on. So that is what happened. But I do get their AK, so I mean, that's still good. But they do have Gush, so now they have the potential to go Counterspell plus Gush and get rid of both, to counter both my removal spells. So I think that was a mistake by me. I probably should have just named Foil and hoped that their AK wouldn't draw them into 2 counterspells. And actually, if I was going to do that, I probably should have just waited until my next turn to even play the therapy. But anyway, you can get a picture of how good the matchup is because I feel like I'm making some fairly minor decisions or minor mistakes, and it hasn't really cost me yet. And also, maybe they're not mistakes. It's hard to say for sure. So I go for the Snuff Out here, I suppose, with the goal of stranding some mana in there, like trying to prevent them from using the mana if they gush on their main phase, and at the cost of taking 12. So, they have to gush in response, and they're going to foil. They're going to peek at my hand, and they're going to foil, discarding some islands. So gush and foil are both gone. They play an island and get in. Yeah, in retrospect, I don't really like the way I play this game at all. But I draw a Duress to totally bail me out, and I Duress them. Again in response, and I see foil and 3 islands and Phyrexian Dreadnought. So I take the foil, and then I play Smother right now on the Dreadnought. Now, how would this game have gone, just thinking out loud here, how would it have gone if I had done it the other way, where I just Rats and I don't play anything? I take 12, and then I have Rats plus Therapy plus 2 removal spells, but they would also have AK, and 2 foils. So they would have been able to foil 1. They would have foiled my Cabal Therapy and then foiled 1 of my removal spells, and I guess gotten two cards deeper with AK, and they would have been able to have 2 more mana, so potentially could have drawn a counterspell. So yeah, maybe the way I did it was correct. Yeah, because they would have had 4 mana, because they wouldn't have had to use any of their mana if I don't go for it on their upkeep. So they actually could have played AK and 2 gushes and had 2 mana left over. So yeah, I do think it worked out better the way I did it, but I'm not sure that it was right. They're down a foil, but they are up 2 more cards, basically. So, tough to say. Anyway, they play an island and pass the turn, so now they're just looking for something to pair with this other Dreadnought before I kill them. So I'm going to be pumping twice. I should have played my Wretch first, but whatever. I'm pumping twice and playing Wretch. They play 2 of these islands are gone. They play an island and pass. I draw Dark Ritual, which is actually kind of nice because I can pump Shade a lot. So I do that. And I do it one more time, and there's some argument to playing around Chain of Vapor here. Let's see, this is 7, or this is 8, puts them to 3. But there's also an argument to putting them to 2. No, actually, this is lethal next turn because I have the spawning pool. If they play a Dreadnought, they can block Shade. I can still attack for 3. So yeah, I think I only pumped 3 here. No, I didn't. I pumped everything. Yeah, this was a little needlessly risky. But they didn't have the chain, so they go to 1, and they definitely can't win at this point. They don't have the Dreadnought anyway, or the thing to pair with Dreadnought. Game 2, this is our draw. This is a pretty good hand. Quite good, actually. It has Snuff Out, which is one of the best cards against them, as well as Hippie and Therapy. I mean, all the cards in this hand are pretty good in this matchup. So I lead with a Therapy. This is another hand where it could be reasonable to name Counterspell. However, with only 1 removal spell, it's a little iffy. I guess in a pinch you could sacrifice your factory to flashback Cabal Therapy. So yeah, this could have been a good one to name Counterspell, but I think I probably named Dreadnought here. Let's see what I did. I mean, Dreadnought is also quite reasonable to name. Yeah, I just named Dreadnought. So they have this hand, and they opt at the end of the turn and keep it on top and pass the turn. So they have Counterspell up. I draw Swamp. I play it, and I guess I just probably roll out this Shade so that, in theory, the Hypnotic Spectre can eventually resolve. I'm assuming they will counterspell that. So, I mean, yeah, it's not ideal for me to get this card counterspelled, but I got to get it out of their hand at some point. And if they're counterspelling that, that's one less counterspell that they have for a removal spell or whatever. I'm interested in trying to resolve my Hypnotic Spectre, though, so we'll see whether that will be possible. So they Portent. If they don't have a third island here, they can't thwart. Even if they do, thwarting is not exactly what they want to be doing, but they may have no choice. Okay, so they do have an island. So I know 3 of their cards. They did not shuffle with Portent. I draw Wasteland. That's not very good. So now I'm faced with a choice. Do I just run out the Hypnotic Spectre? Do I play Factory and just wait? Then next turn I could animate Factory, use that on the thwart, and then try and resolve Spectre. I think, I guess I just went for it, assuming that they really won't want to thwart right now. So I just cast the Hypnotic Spectre, and it resolved. So I guess I was right about them not wanting to thwart. And yeah, I mean, part of this is reasonable because they just have chains, so they're almost certainly just going to chain it at the end of the turn, which they don't. Well, they're playing Accumulated Knowledge instead. They can just chain it later. However, now they can't hardcast thwart. Like if they'd chain, they could have hardcast a thwart next turn. But I guess they're just assuming that probably wouldn't work, so might as well try and get this accumulated knowledge cycled through. They play an island and pass. I draw another Hypnotic Spectre, which is a very good draw. So I get in with my first Hypnotic Spectre. They chain it. So that's gone. And now I probably would just play it again. Yeah. I don't tap my Factory, notably, because of Sabo's Web. The possibility of that. It looks like they are going to go ahead and thwart this. Yeah, so if I hadn't drawn a second one, I mean, if I drew some other creature, maybe I would have played that and used that to Flashback Therapy. Tough to know exactly what would have happened, or maybe I could have used Factory on it to try and resolve that hippie, but since I have another, I decided it wasn't necessary to do that. So anyway, they thwart. Go to their turn. They don't use the mana that they floated. They replay an island. So at this point, I know they have like 2 more islands in their hand. They Portent. They don't shuffle. I draw a Shade, which is another really good draw, because now I can just play both of these, and that's, I'm assuming, what I will do. I think I lead with Spectre, because I guess if it gets, I'd rather have the Shade get dazed if they have daze, but I'm not going to play around daze, because the upside of getting this Shade into play right now while they're basically tapped out is it's too high. So there's the Shade, that resolves as well. So yeah, now they're just fully on the Dreadnought plan, which could work. They've portented and drawn a lot of cards, and I'm including the Gush that they could potentially cast. They play an island, and they have the Dreadnought, so they just go for it. They stifle it, so they have that in play ready to block. So I guess I won't be getting in with Shade right now. I draw a Smother, which is a very, very good draw. Because otherwise I really only had the 1 removal spell. I do have Hypnotic Spectre, potential Sacrifice on Cabal Therapy, and the Snuff Out. So I have a decent amount of disruption here, but obviously adding the Smother is pretty huge. So now I'm faced with the choice of, do I just sacrifice my Factory to Flashback Therapy before combat and try and kill this Dreadnought, or do I Hypnotic Spectre first? The argument to Spectre first is that if I do attack with Spectre, they're kind of incentivized to cast their Gush, or else they lose it. And casting it's pretty good because that decreases the amount of that decreases the likelihood that whatever card they want to keep will get discarded, because they'll have more cards in their hand because of the 2 islands for the random discard. So given that, I mean, they can do that whenever they want, basically. There's some upside if I can successfully kill the Dreadnought to being able to get in with Nantuko Shade this turn, but that's not really the main thing that's important right now. The main thing is getting this Dreadnought off the table. So yeah, looking at this again, I think the right play is probably to therapy pre-combat, and they'll gush in response, and then I can name Vision Charm or Foil. Basically, those are the cards I really care about. And then I can see what they have and get in with Spectre or kill it before combat if I know I'm able to. So I think that's probably what I should do. But let's see what I did. Looks like I decided to attack first, which probably is going to prompt them to gush anyway, so maybe it's kind of the same thing. Yeah, they do gush. So I suppose I could try and respond to this. And they only have 5 cards in hand, so they would actually need Vision Charm plus Foil to stop both these removal spells, and they would need to already have them. So I could go for it now, or I could wait and let them draw and then get a random discard. I think I probably should wait and let them draw, and then I can post-board or post-combat therapy them. Yeah, so it looks like I did do that. And so they take a hit and they discard an island at random, which is not too surprising. All right, so now I activate the factory and use it to flashback Cabal Therapy. I think here I would name either Vision Charm or Foil. Looks like I named Vision Charm. They have Foil plus Gush plus Portent plus Flash and two islands. So pretty good hand, all things considered. I play the Wasteland, and I could do this now. I could do it on upkeep. It doesn't really matter that much. So you can see the way this turned out. I would have been better off therapying pre-combat, because then I could have got in with this Nantuko Shade. Although as it turns out, I would have only been getting in for 3, but that's still more than nothing. So they use the foil, discarding Island and Flash, which is, the ideal foil. And then I snuff out the Dreadnought so that it dies. So they're left with the Portent, Island, and Gush. So they have the potential to rebuild here, but they're going to need to do it pretty quickly, basically within 1 turn, or else the Hypnotic Spectre will probably be too much. So yeah, really they should be at like 15 here. I play a Swamp, and I go ahead and crack in with both, fully pumping the Shade. If they use a Chain of Vapor on it now, that's totally fine, because then they're not going to be able to play Flash of Insight, which I know they would like to do. They lose their Portent. Yeah, they can't really gush in response because, well, they need 2 lands in play anyway, so yeah, never mind. That wouldn't ever be something they would do. But they do keep their gush, which I think is pretty good for them. And now they're going to Flash at the end of the turn. So if they can put together Dreadnought plus Stifle, they're still in a lot of trouble because I'm not dead to 1 hit from a Dreadnought. So my Spectre can keep getting in. And if they attack me, I kill them on the crackback. So they kind of sort of needed to do it that previous turn in order for it to potentially work. So they do flash back the Insight, and then they gush. They do find a Dreadnought, and they Vision Charm it. Unfortunately, they're kind of, they're not dead, but they're basically dead. And they would need to have Chain of Vapor in order to deal with these creatures. I happen to draw Vendetta, which is also another very good draw. So now the only minor decision here is how much to attack for. If I pump everything into the Shade, it's lethal. However, then I do sort of get clowned by a Chain of Vapor, which they could play right now, and I can't bounce their Dreadnought because it's phased out. So I tried to play around Chain of Vapor here because I was so far ahead, and I only pumped the Shade. How much did I pump the Shade? I think I pumped it only do a 4/3, which puts them to 3. I think in retrospect I should have pumped it 1 more time, and then if they bounce it, the reason I only did it this much was so that I could replay Shade and have Vendetta up, Shade or Hippie, I guess, and have Vendetta up, which I think is pretty logical. However, this does mean that I could actually lose to exactly Island into Gush into 2nd Dreadnought. That's pretty unlikely, but it is one thing I could lose to here. So if I had pumped again, then they basically are dead to either Shade or Hypnotic Spectre. If they were to chain it, though, then I'm kind of reliant on not. I kind of have to not play an Antico Shade and leave up Vendetta. I mean, I don't have to, but I probably should. I don't know. That's a tricky one. Maybe this was right, because that way I still have two. Well, I don't have two lethal threats, but I still have. I mean, I still beat anything except another Dreadnought plus counterspell for my Vendetta, or some kind of counter for my Vendetta. And if the counter for Vendetta is Vision Charm, that doesn't really work either because it just phases their Dreadnought out again, and then they will die to my attack, unless, like I said, they have second Dreadnought, in which case I guess I would lose. So yeah, this is kind of a tricky one here. If this wasteland was just a swamp, then it would be very easy, but it's not. Anyway, that's what I did. They didn't have chain anyway, so they're totally dead. I go for the Vendetta on their upkeep, and it just works, and that's gonna be the game. Okay, so I played the same player again in the finals. Apparently, I lost the first game. Unfortunately, it's too bad because that was an interesting game, but I think there is an error with the replays for game one of the finals, because the last time I tried to do this, it also didn't work, and it didn't work this time either. It shows something really weird that it basically shows me like passing the turn and then conceding. So it's not obviously what really happened in the game. So that is a quirk with these MTGO replays. But anyway, this is my hand in game two. It's a good hand. Very good hand, actually. So my opponent passes the turn. I draw another duress. So I duress my opponent. I see Gush, Counterspell, Opt, Vision Charm, Chain of Vapor. Given that I don't have, I mean, it's very, very tempting to take the Gush here, but given that I have no removal spell for a turn 2 Dreadnought and they're about to opt, I think I have to take Vision Charm, which is what I take. And, the duresses will still be good later. I think if I recall correctly in game one, that was a game I lost where I accidentally forgot to remove an accumulated knowledge in response to, like, I made them discard it with Hippie, and then they played a second one and I forgot to remove it with Wretch because I was just clicking too fast, and they ended up drawing a thwart to counter my removal spell. I think that's what happened. And I lost that game, and it's possible I wouldn't have lost if I had remembered. Either that or that's this game. I guess we'll find out. So duress, I duress again. They can just counterspell here, which they do. So Vision Charm and counterspell are both gone. And then I duress again, hoping to hit their Gush, which I do, but they have another one. So given that my hand is quite slow, I just go ahead and take one of the Gushes. So they have Gush and 2 Chain of Vapors in their hand. They don't draw land and don't want to Gush yet, so they just pass. I draw a second Graveborn Muse, go ahead and play my Withered Wretch, start exiling some cards. They don't want to chain that. And now they are ready to Gush. So they do that, play an island, and they have a Dreadnought. So, this is looking pretty hairy for me right here because I do not have any removal spell right now. They stifle the Dreadnought. So their hand is 1 island at least and 2 Chain of Vapors. I exile the stifle. I draw another Withered Wretch, which is not very good. So I have nothing I can really do, so I just go ahead and play the Graveborn Muse. They go to their turn and attack with Dreadnought. I really have no choice but to take it. I could block with Withered Wretch to absorb some damage, but I think I want it in play to draw as much as possible. Now, granted, that will mean it's going to be very hard for me to win because these 2 zombies will be dealing me damage even if I do deal with this Dreadnought. So I'm in a really tight spot here, but I think I just take it. Yeah. And, hope to sack my Graveborn Muse later to a Cabal Therapy or something. Now, my opponent here decides to bounce my Graveborn Muse, I guess to try and prevent me from drawing an answer, but I don't love this play because now I get to try and bounce their Phyrexian Dreadnought. So I do, and they Vision Charm it, which sounds okay, but here's the problem. They could have used that Vision Charm to save it from a removal spell, but they now have used it to save it from their own Chain of Vapor. So I don't think this was a great idea, personally, but maybe there's something I'm missing. I do draw a Smother, so now I really have no choice but to hope this works during their upkeep. I attack for 2. Yeah, the odds, it's not beyond the realm of possibility that I would have just died to my Graveborn Muse if they hadn't bounced it. So, upkeep, I have no choice. I have to just try for this Smother and see if it works. Okay, the replay is messed up again here. It shows them bouncing their Dreadnought, but not me playing Smother. But I definitely did play it, so that's really weird. So it shows them passing the turn, and I exile a card at the end of the turn. Or I think I was going to, but I don't know, something got messed up there. Anyway, I drew Hypnotic Spectre, so I just go ahead and play that. And this thing continues to be messed up, so it's not showing me playing the Spectre, but I definitely did. And attacked with Wretch. So these replays are not totally working correctly, I would say. Okay, and then during the second main phase, something happens. No, nothing. Okay. I'm not sure exactly how much this is accurately representing the game state anymore. They tap mana for something. I draw a Plague Bearer. Attack with a Hypnotic Spectre and a Withered Wretch. No, it's not showing me attacking either. All right, well, this thing is kind of totally messed up, so I guess this isn't very useful. But, because I was definitely playing these cards, and then eventually they concede. All right, I don't know if this is actually super useful. Let's see if the third game worked at all. Okay, so game 1 and 2 did not work very well of this last match. So this is game 3. I'm on the play, and I have a therapy. So I lead off with turn 1 therapy. So what do I name here? Because I have the ability to flash back therapy with rats, I don't have to kick it off with a name of Dreadnought right away. I suppose if they have a totally perfect draw, they could counter my rats with foil, or maybe daze it, but I don't think I've seen a daze out of this player, so I think they're not really playing them. So given that, I could see naming like Counterspell or Gush, which are both pretty good cards against me, and by the time I want to play Hypnotic Spectre, they could play Counterspell, but I could always name that later. So probably I would name, I mean, there's nothing wrong with naming Dreadnought here, but I could see naming something else. Looks like I named Gush, and I did hit. So they have a pretty good hand, which now consists of Opt, Island, Thwart, Counterspell, Dreadnought. Pass it over to them. They draw and play a Island, and assuming they will be opting at the end of the turn. I draw a Diabolic Edict, which is a pretty good draw. I'm going to go ahead and roll out the rats here, and they are going to, they thought about opting in response, but they don't, and they probably are discarding Thwart here. I don't know. What do they discard? No, they discard the Opt. Okay, so they decided they don't need the Opt. So that's a little scary, but since I drew this Edict to deal with Dreadnought, it's a lot less scary. So I think, yeah, I go ahead and pass the turn here. I mean, you either want to just name Dreadnought right now, or you want to pass the turn because planning to name Counterspell so that you can resolve Hypnotic Spectre. So that's what I'm doing. Okay, so they had another Opt. So they opt with that, and they keep that on top. They play their second Island and pass. So they don't have the turn 2 Dreadnought, but they probably are going to try to Dreadnought next turn because they do have Thwart backup, assuming they're able to. And especially after I play this Hypnotic Spectre. So I can get in with rats, and then the plan is to, I think, therapy, naming Counterspell, and get this Hypnotic Spectre into play. Since I waited a turn, I've sort of given up my opportunity to be able to name Dreadnought, because they can always counter if they want. So whatever I play here, they're probably just going to counter it, and they do. So now I can just play my Hypnotic Spectre. I'm not playing Mishra's Factory again to play around Sabo's Web, and also if they don't go for the Dreadnought, then I will want to play my other Hypnotic Spectre next turn anyway, and I won't be attacking. So they play an island, they have no more counterspell, but they do have Thwart, and they do have a Dreadnought, and they have a Stifle. So the Dreadnought's in play, and their hand is Thwart plus Mystery card. I draw Graveborn Muse. So at this point, I'm certainly going to attack with Hypnotic Spectre and then see what happens. They can't thwart because I haven't played any spells, and they discard a card. They discard the thwart to Hypnotic Spectre. So now it's like pretty safe to go for the Edict. However, yeah, there's really nothing they could actually have here, I guess. They could have Chain, but then they would need to draw another. They would need to chain into going off next turn. Or they could have Gush, but it's pretty risky to not have played it in response to Hypnotic Spectre. Or no, never mind, because then they wouldn't be able to thwart, so I guess that's why maybe they wouldn't do that. So yeah, they could have Gush, but it's pretty safe to Edict. However, it's also fairly safe to play Spectre. And then if I resolve a Spectre, they really will have no way to protect the Dreadnought next turn. But it could let them play a second Dreadnought. So there is some risk to that if they have the exact right two cards. So let's see what I did here. Looks like I played Spectre. I think it's defensible, but it might be riskier than it really needs to be. Because realistically, if I just get this get this Dreadnought off the board with Edict, they're not really going to be able to build back up. So that was maybe a little loose, even though I thought it was like a clever play at the time, but I think in retrospect, maybe that was not the right thing to do. Either way, they get in. They don't have a second Dreadnought. They opt looking for something. They keep it on top and play Island and play Powder Keg. So I can understand the motivation behind this, but because I have the Graveborn Muse too, it's really not going to work. And it's going to take a really long time to kill these Spectres with that card. But obviously, I'm going to make them discard their hand. So I guess you might as well get something you can play. All right, so I Edict them. I offer the Trade with Factory. They don't take it. They take a bunch from Spectre, draw a card, play an island, and this game is essentially over. So unfortunately, there were some more interesting games that got messed up because of the replay not working. Yeah, they just pour it into here, shuffle. I mean, there's literally nothing they can get at this point. I draw off Muse, draw another Edict, and we get the GGs. All right, so I ran pretty hot in that particular challenge, so I wanted to take a look at another match from previous challenge where I didn't run quite so hot and see what we could learn from that. So this is from a different challenge, but same matchup. I draw this opening hand. I think I have a pretty good idea that this is what this player is playing. They usually play this. So I'm on the draw, so I decide to keep this hand because really all it needs is one land, and then it's pretty good. And if I get a second eventually, it's very good. They mulligan to 5. They kick it off with an island and a portent. So I play my I draw a factory, play Swamp and Duress. They have Stifle and Gush. So there is obviously some risk here if I don't take the Stifle. On the other hand, Gush is very good. It's a card that can kind of pull them back out of the situation they're in. In retrospect, I probably just have to take the Stifle here to avoid the early Dreadnought, since my hand has a lot of stuff. So I can probably like pour on the threats enough if I avoid facing down an early 12-12. I did take the Stifle. Okay, so that makes sense. Like, it's tempting to take the Gush, but I just don't think you can. They play the island. I draw a Wretch, not exactly what I'm looking for. And here I probably make a little bit of an error here and play Ravenous Rats. I was trying to be mana efficient. However, and like if I play Cabal Therapy here, I would assume they would just gush in response. And since that's the only card I know about, and then, you know, I guess I would have a 50-50 chance, or not 50-50, but some chance of being able to name something else they might draw. But instead, I just play Rats. They have a island to spare to discard. So the Rats was maybe not the best choice there. And I could have therapied to either, you know, force them to use the gush, and then at least I'm not getting comboed the very next turn because they wouldn't have enough lands in play. As it stands, they are able to gush, and they draw into Dreadnought plus Stifle. And here I'm looking like an idiot with this Cabal Therapy in my hand. So this is a useful lesson to learn. This is from an earlier challenge, so I learned the lesson not to try, like, mana efficiency is not the only important thing, and maybe it's not even close to the most important thing. The most important thing is not facing down a 12-12 if you have no answer for it. If you do have answers for it, then the formula can change a little bit, but I did not. So I therapy here, naming Vision Charm as a way they could potentially protect their Dreadnought. They, as it turns out, have foil Island Impulse. They crack in for 12. And I'm basically drawing dead because even if I draw a removal spell, they have the foil for it. I draw Therapy and lose the game. So let that be a lesson in terms of which card to play when. All right, let's see what happens in game 2 of this match. I open with a hand of double Therapy, Spectre, Rats. It's a pretty good hand. Looks like my opponent kept. I kick it off with a Therapy. I'm assuming I named Dreadnought here since I have no... I mean, actually, I have some time to name something else, so I could name... I mean, I potentially could name Gush. I could name Portent. I have some options because I do have the second Therapy too. Let's see. I named Dreadnought, and they have Gush, Impulse, Portent, Opt, and 2 islands. So yeah, that's a situation where I think it might have actually been better to name something else besides Dreadnought, since I do have a lot of redundant therapies. Now, I suppose if I don't, they can go Island, foil my next Cabal Therapy, and then a turn 2 Dreadnought. So, you know, it is a bit risky. So maybe that's an argument to just name Dreadnought anyway. They play Island and Portent. They do not shuffle. I draw a Factory. And again, there's the possibility that I could get turn 2'd here. But I guess I just decided to play the Rats anyway. I mean, it's a little... I can still flash back the Therapy, right? So, but I would have to flash it back on something I don't know about. Or, yeah, the possibility of getting turn 2'd still remains. They decide to foil it, right, because it represents a flashback on Therapy. So if you were going to foil the Therapy, you, I guess, might as well foil the Rats. So they do that, discarding the Opt and an Island. And foil is the card I don't know about. So they have Gush, Impulse, Island, and a mystery card. So foil was one of the cards I didn't know about. They play Island, and am I getting Dreadnoughted here? No, they just have a Sabo's Web, which is pretty good against what's in my hand. Incidentally, that's why I didn't want to play Factory, and why you kind of don't want to play it and use it until you are really in the clear, so to speak. What I mean is, you know, if your Factory gets tapped down later by a Sabo's Web, like later on in the game, it's not the end of the world. These things happen. But if you end up getting sort of pseudo time walked because you used a Factory to play something and you didn't really need to, because you thought you might like get in with it next turn, you got to really ask yourself, are you actually planning to attack with it? Because if not, maybe don't play it and tap it, because they do have Sabo's Web and it is relevant, having that mana available later, or just like, you know, not losing out on a land. All right, so I draw Withered Wretch. Now I have to play Factory, and yeah, I guess I'm just rolling out this Hypnotic Spectre here and daring them to have it. They don't, but they can certainly go for it here. So yeah, I guess I can see playing the Spectre here, because what else am I doing? I mean, it's such a huge tempo loss if I just play therapy instead. At a certain point, you do have to like try to present some threats and win the game. So they go ahead and gush and impulse, but they cannot produce a Dreadnought this turn because they won't have the mana. So there's that silver lining. They replay an island. I know they have 2 more islands in their hand and 5 mystery cards. And I have a Cabal Therapy, or I draw a therapy. So at this point, I think it makes sense to fire these off first. I can play 1, 2, 3 therapies this turn potentially. So that's going to be pretty good. I do that. Given what has happened here, what would I name? I mean, it's not crazy to just name Phyrexian Dreadnought, which I do, and I hit 1. Because, yeah, I mean, they've drawn a bunch of cards if they got it off their impulse. If they didn't see it and they wanted to impulse, that's like very likely to be the card they pick off an impulse. So we get one of those, and they have 4 islands, a gush, and a counterspell. Those are all going away. Or sorry, no, I'm wrong. I can't play all the therapies. I can only play 2 of the 3. So I'm assuming here I will hit their gush. Yeah, and then counterspell is basically, can be plucked from their hand whenever I want. They discard an island. They play an island, so their hand is 3 islands and a counterspell. I untap, draw Hypnotic Spectre. So here I guess I would probably just animate Spawning Pool and use that to therapy the counterspell. Yep, so that's what I do. Get their counterspell, they drew Flash of Insight. So they have 2 islands and a Flash of Insight. I get in with Spectre. They discard the Flash of Insight, which is not great for me, but they don't use it at the end of the turn. Yeah, I don't know. I guess that makes sense. They want, well, no, does it? That seems a little weird. It seems like it might make sense to use it, but they don't. So I get in with my Hypnotic Spectre. They lose an island. And I go ahead and play a Withered Wretch. I don't know about anything in their hand right now, but this Withered Wretch can be useful later. If I draw a removal spell, I can sack it to therapy because I'm not really going to want to sack my Hypnotic Spectre, and I might not have the mana to sacrifice my Mishra's Factory to animate and sacrifice. This also kind of makes them use their Flash of Insight now, because if they let me untap, I can start to like remove cards from their graveyard to make it worse, or just force them to use it. So they do go ahead and use it. They dig with Flash and fail to find anything of note and concede the game. So this is game 3. I open a hand with 6 lands and a Dark Ritual, so that's a mulligan. This hand's pretty fine. 3 swamps, Hippie, Edict, Duress, Rats. I guess I would have to put back Rats. Yep. But, I mean, this is pretty solid for a mull to 6. They play an island and a Portent. They do not shuffle off the Portent. I draw a Ritual. So, now I'm faced with the classic choice of, do I Duress first or do I Ritual into Hippie? I think I decided to go for a Duress here. Yeah. And, I mean, this seems like this is the way to try and not get turn 2'd, but given that I mulled to 6, maybe it's better for me to try and take a more, a sort of swing for the fences approach. I don't know. Anyway, I see a hand which is pretty good of Vision Charm ×2, Dreadnought, foil, Misdirection. So this hand is, and an island, so this hand's going to be tough to beat. So what does it make sense to take here? I mean, I have Edict that can get misdirected or foiled or stopped with Vision Charm. So I think my logic here was I take Misdirection, and since foil requires more cards, maybe I can like run them out of cards. Yeah, I think that was my logic. So I took Misdirection, but really, I don't know. The second I saw this hand, I don't really think I could win. This is one of those like God draws I was talking about, or pretty close to it. I mean, if my hand had even more disruption, it's possible I could beat it. But the combination of all this redundant disruption and speed, or redundant pieces of the combo and counterplay, and the fact that they're doing it on turn 2 is kind of too much. There's the Dreadnought, and there is the Vision Charm. So their remaining hand is Foil, Vision Charm, Mystery card. So I can't Edict them yet. I draw a Swamp, which is not helpful. I have to Ritual out Hippie and then hope my Hippie gets rid of their foil, and then foil or Vision Charm. I draw a Duress or Cabal Therapy to get the other thing, and then successfully Edict them after taking 12. It's not a great plan, but it is a plan. However, they draw Gush, which I think, well, it doesn't mean I'm drawing dead, but it severely reduces my odds, that's for sure, because now they can, they just have way more cards that Hippie can hit that are not relevant. So they hit me for 12. I untap, draw another Swamp. Not helpful. And basically means I've lost because I needed to draw another piece of disruption there to even have a shot. So I attack them for 2. They lose 2, discard an island, and I go for the Edict. I go for the Edict on their upkeep, but it's not going to work. They counter it with a foil, so I lost that match in the earlier challenge. Okay, there's one more match that I wanted to show that I thought was interesting. This is from a different event, but same matchup, slightly different deck list. So here I have an opening of Ritual. I'm keeping this hand. I can choose between Ritual Hypnotic Spectre or turn 1 Cabal Therapy. My opponent is on the play. They play an island. They play a Portent, so if I didn't know what they were playing, I definitely do now. Well, not definitely, but I have a pretty good idea. They could be on Grow or whatever. So yeah, choice of Therapy or Ritual Hypnotic Spectre. I still don't know really what the better decision here is. Because I have the second Therapy, maybe it makes more sense to lead with Therapy, because then next turn I can try and clear the way for Hypnotic Spectre with the other Therapy if I miss. I also drew Smother. So I think drawing that Smother made me more inclined to go for Ritual Spectre because I have like a little bit more insurance to try and make sure that I can smother a Dreadnought if they do produce it. Because I can go attack with Spectre, Therapy twice, and then hopefully smother the turn after and have it work. So I think that was my logic, and I played Hypnotic Spectre, but I don't know if that's right. I think maybe it's not right, actually. So they draw an island and they produce a Dreadnought using Stifle, or no, using Vision Charm, sorry. So that's actually kind of relevant because I can't now try and smother it on my turn, which I probably wouldn't have anyway because I have these 2 therapies. So I probably should have actually played it before playing my land. Well, no, that's not, never mind, because I would use the second Therapy over sacrificing Mishra's Factory. So I Therapy naming Gush, and I see Counterspell, Opt, Flash of Insight. So I'm guessing I hit the Counterspell here. Oh no, I attack. It's a little weird. The fact that they have Flash of Insight is pretty bad for me, because it's like I don't want to not attack with my Spectre, but then if I hit the Flash of Insight with it, it's quite bad, because then they can flash it back in response to a removal spell, and I can't Therapy it because it's in their graveyard. I think I probably should have hit the Counterspell before attacking. Or no. Actually, it makes sense not to, because I want to reduce the chance that they discard Flash of Insight. So they discard Island, and now I can hit the Counterspell. And so their hand is Opt, Flash of Insight. I pass. They attack me for 12, and then they pass the turn. So I draw a Swamp. So at this point, I kind of have the choice of I can use Factory to blind Therapy on something, and then I can Hypnotic Spectre. If I Spectre, the problem is that if I discard Flash of Insight, it actually helps them cast it and look for Gush or something like that. So I think probably the right play here is maybe not to attack with Spectre, but I did attack with Spectre in the game, and I hit the Flash of Insight. So that's not great for me. Now that's in their graveyard, and I could blind Therapy for Opt, but they can just play it in response, and then I'll have no information. So I decide to just go for the smother on their upkeep, and they flash in response for 3, which isn't a ton, but it's not nothing. And they find a gush, which helps them find a foil. And they foil my smother, and I die to Dreadnought. So an example of what not to do. This is from an earlier challenge, and yeah, it's just a very tricky deck to play against. So even though the heuristic that you would generally follow is, yeah, attack them with Spectre so that you can clear cards out of their hand before they, before trying to kill the Dreadnought, sometimes that is actually the wrong thing to do, and you're better off just trying it without. Now, did it make sense to flash back a blind therapy? Yeah, maybe, because basically I need to kill the Dreadnought in order to not die. The argument against it is, if I do kill the Dreadnought, I still need to kill my opponent, and they could eventually draw something like a Essence Flare to take care of the Spectre, and if I've sacrificed my factory, then I have no pressure. So that would be the argument against doing it. So I think there's arguments on both sides, but I definitely should have not attacked with Spectre. I think the previous turn it was okay to do it, just because I knew I only had a 25% chance to hit it, and they had good cards in their hand that I would want to get rid of. But maybe even the previous turn, I should have just gotten rid of the counterspell. In any case, also maybe an argument or the way this game ended up playing out, I certainly wished I had Therapy turn 1 instead of playing Hypnotic Spectre. But I've had other games in which I had the same choice, did the other thing, and lost. So I don't know. It's hard to know exactly what to do against Dreadnought. Anyway, we're back for the second game. All right, so game 2, I'm on the play. I open with this hand. This is an example of a hand that people might be inclined to mulligan, but I think it's actually a keep. It has some disruption, and it has Hypnotic Spectre as like more permanent disruption. So I'm assuming I kept. Yeah, looks like I did. I don't think you absolutely have to mulligan to a removal spell, as if you have like something you can do to disrupt them, like a duress. So sorry, they had Portent, Daze, Foil, Dreadnought, and some islands. So this is a hand that is missing one half of the combo, and it's pretty straightforward that I need to take the thing that helps them dig for that half. Now, if I had a removal spell in my hand, maybe I would feel differently, and I could take the foil, because that way if they find the Stifle or Vision Charm, I can let them do it and then try and kill the thing. But it depends. It's still kind of risky because they also have Daze, so unless I draw another land, it's not going to actually work. So I probably would take Portent in any scenario here. Well, not any scenario, but most scenarios. All right, so they play an island, pass the turn. I draw a Diabolic Edict, which is very welcome. And here I think I just want to start the pressure. Yeah, I play Shade. If they want to daze it, they can. But if they, they're not really super eager to spend a daze, so if it resolves, then I get to start applying some pressure to them. I'm probably gonna play a 2-drop next turn either way. They play an island and pass, so that's gone. I draw another 2-drop, so now they're pretty incentivized to daze whatever I play, and I'm very incentivized to play something to get the daze out of their hand. So I attack just for 2, and then I probably throw a Wretch. Yeah, I throw a Wretch out there. I'm assuming this will get dazed, and it does. They play an island and pass the turn. I draw a Smother. So this is good, but I'm obviously still a little light on mana here. I think here I play, it looks like I'm interested in attacking, and then probably playing one of these 2-drops again. I think either one is defensible at this point. Rats is kind of nice because it's not really a card they want to spend a counter on, but it still gets a card out of their hand. So yeah, I do play the Rats. There's an argument to play the Withered Wretch too, just so the clock is a little bit faster. But they don't have that many cards in their hand, so it seems like the card discard could be somewhat relevant. And one of them is foil, so it's relevant for that. If I do get Hypnotic Spectre down, then the extra discard can start compounding. In response, they flash for 1 and let the rat resolve, discarding a Dreadnought. So this is quite a surprise to see them discard a Dreadnought here, but that's what they did. I mean, on the one hand, it's a card I know about, so I guess that makes it worse against Cabal Therapy, but it's also the card they need to win the game. So they play a land and pass the turn. So the only card I know about is foil now. I draw Withered Wretch, more 2-drops. I get in, and I'm assuming I will probably just be playing this Withered Wretch. Attack for 3, cast a Withered Wretch, it resolves. They don't want to foil that one, and they flash back, Flash of Insight, only for 2, which is not that much. So now they have 6 in hand, they opt, put 1 on the bottom, and play Sabo's Web, which is a decent card, but not that relevant at the moment. I draw a Dark Ritual. So I have the choice here of trying to play Hypnotic Spectre, or saving Dark, or pumping some mana into Shade and playing Wretch. Or playing Hypnotic Spectre and pumping once into Shade, or just saving it so I can cast 2 removal spells. I don't remember what I did here. If I were choosing now, which I guess I am, I would probably try and play Hypnotic Spectre, because I'm attacking, that way I'm attacking for, I guess they flash back the flash because I have a Withered Wretch in play, but yeah, and they wanted to use their mana, I suppose. Anyway, sorry, back to this turn. I was just thinking about the flash play. So yeah, if I were choosing now, I would probably try and play Spectre and pump Shade. So that means I get to attack for 6, put them to 7. I'm still at 20. So that puts them under the gun pretty hard. If they foil the Spectre and then play a Dreadnought, I get 2 cracks at trying to kill it with Smother into Edict, and they're down some cards. So that seems reasonable. If I just try and funnel everything into Shade, I am at risk of getting blown out by Chain of Vapor. So that's something to always be aware of. Doesn't mean it's wrong to do it, but it's a consideration. So let's see what I did. I play Ritual, and yeah, I play Hypnotic Spectre. That's like the most vanilla play, I guess, but I think it's probably the best play. Then I get in with my creatures, pump Shade, they take it, go to 7, they play a Dreadnought now, and stifle it. So the stifling is good, because now they have it as a blocker. I draw a Knight of Stromgald, which I was playing in this build of the deck in this particular tournament. And so I know they have a foil in hand and 2 mana up. So there's also the possibility of misdirection, which could be very, very bad on this particular board. So I think the interesting thing about this game is I think it makes sense in this scenario to not actually cast either of my removal spells and probably just attack with everything. Well, I could either attack with everything or I could just attack with Hypnotic Spectre. That would put them to 5. And then if they play another Dreadnought, I'm kind of in trouble, because I can only get in for 3. Well, yeah, if I did that, I would play Wretch, and then it would still be lethal even if they play another Dreadnought and try and block with both next turn. But then again, if I attack with everything, that would also be the case. So I think the play here is to maybe play Wretch first and see what happens. And that could sort of guide my decision making. But I don't do that. I guess because I'm trying to hit the foil with Hypnotic Spectre. Let's see what I attack with. Looks like I attack with everything. So my logic here, I suppose, is they probably don't have Chain of Vapor. Now if they do have Chain of Vapor, it's not as good because I can copy it and try to bounce their Dreadnought. Although that would be an argument for playing Wretch first, because I do have to lose a land to copy it. But anyway, I guess my thinking is if they block, they block either Shade, they go to 2. they are dead next turn to Hypnotic Spectre without some way to deal with it, even if they play another Dreadnought. So that's what I do. And the Shade dies, the Hypnotic Spectre connects and hits a nothing, because they concede. Yeah, I guess they had no outs at that point. But I do think I probably should have played Withered Wretch first, realistically. Anyway, all right, so game 3, I open this hand. This is Mulligan because it has no lands. And I keep this hand, Therapy Double Wretch. Actually, do I keep this hand? I'm not sure if I kept. I think it's reasonable to keep, but I may have mulliganed it. I mean, it does have some disruption and has a bit of a clock, but it's not like an amazing hand. Looks like I did keep. I do like to keep hands. So yeah, I just put the Wasteland on the bottom because that card doesn't really do anything in the matchup other than tap for colorless mana. They play an island and pass. They kept 7. So, you know, pretty scary. I Cabal Therapy them turn 1, presumably, and given the contents of my hand, I basically have to name Phyrexian Dreadnought here because I have no answer to it. So I do, and I whiff, and this is their hand. So my factory is looking not great, but the good news is they don't have either half of the combo. So they kept a bit of a slower hand here, trying to play more of a controlling game. They opt and keep, which is not really what I want to see. They play an island and play a Sabo's Web. So my factory will only be attacking once this game, or only be tapping once at all, I should say. But I do have the Therapy, so it's still going to do something. I draw Vendetta, which, you know, is a card that can kill a Phyrexian Dreadnought at a steep, steep cost. So I roll out a Withered Wretch and pass the turn. Plan this game is to just hope that they don't draw any, they don't draw the combo particularly soon, and I can just attack them with my Grizzly Bears. One nice thing about Vendetta is that it cannot be misdirected unless you happen to have a factory animated for some reason, which I would recommend not doing if you can help it. So yeah, even though it costs you 12 life, it does have a little bit of upside versus things like Diabolic Edict and Smother, which sometimes can be misdirected. Well, Smother sometimes and Diabolic Edict all the time. So they Portent, which is a card they've drawn. Oh, they don't have this web anymore. And they do Shuffle, which is good news for me. However, they Gush, which is very bad news for me. That was like the one card this sort of controlling type hand was missing, and now they have it. So it's looking kind of bad for me here. They play an island, but they don't find anything to do with their 1 mana, which is nice. And then they go to discard and discard an island. So I can presume they have at least 1 more island in their hand, as well as Foil, Misdirection, and Counterspell. The good news about them gushing there is that they now do not have Counterspell open to counter my next Grizzly Bear, which I certainly will be playing. There's a factory, and I attack for 2 and play another one of these. I guess I should play Knight, because I already have 1 Wretch in play, so I don't really need a second one. I suppose the argument for playing Wretch is I'd rather sacrifice it to Therapy, but I have these factories I can sacrifice, so probably play Knight. No, I play Wretch. All right, I can't really explain that. I don't think that's correct. My opponent plays an island and passes the turn back to me. I draw Spawning Pool, which is pretty hilarious. That's going to stay tapped forever, but it can be used to flashback Cabal Therapy, as we all know. So I get in for 2 damage, or for 4 damage rather. And I'm assuming I just run my Knight into this counterspell to get it out of there. But to my surprise, the Knight resolves, which doesn't, I mean, I guess they're already under pressure, so maybe just 1 more Knight doesn't matter. But I actually have a ton of pressure on them now because the factories can still both get in once. So I'm attacking for 10 next turn, which if I do will put them in a position where even playing a Dreadnought will not save them from dying to another attack, unless they have a Chain or a Essence Flare or something. So I am quite surprised that that didn't get countered, actually. They go to their draw step, they opt, put 1 on top, and Gush again, and opt again. So I guess this is going to be one of those games, I forgot how this went. I guess this is just going to be one of those games where they never find a Dreadnought, because now they're actually drawing dead. if they needed to Dreadnought like that turn. They chain my knight, but that's, yeah, I mean, that doesn't really buy them any time. I don't think it's worth sacrificing to bounce Sabo's Web here, because at this point, these factories really only need to attack once. They go to clean up step and discard a Dreadnought, so they must have found that off their opt after it was too late to do it, or they didn't find, or they have like a bunch of Dreadnoughts but no Stifler Vision Charm to go with it. One of those things. I draw Factory, which is actually pretty good. And I just replay Knight while they're tapped out and play another Factory. I guess that makes sense because Spawning Pool can't untap anyway. I get in with my 2/2s, and at this point it is officially too late for them to not lose here. They play an island, they make a Dreadnought, and they Vision Charm it, which is just puts them dead on board. But even if they had Stifle, I think it still would not have been enough. So it gets Vision Charmed. I draw Therapy, which doesn't really do anything. And I just attack. I mean, it doesn't matter. I just attack with my factories and they're dead on board. So yeah, that was one of those games where it just took far too long to assemble the combo, which does happen with that deck. So what can I say about the matchup between Stiflenut and Moneyball Black? In that particular challenge, or again, that last match was from an earlier challenge, but in the first one, the first 5 matches that I showed, that was the most recent one, and I beat Dreadnought 5 times. I got pretty lucky. I drew quite well, but I do think it's a good matchup in general. I do think it's kind of harder to play. Well, it's not always hard to play, but like some of the games, one player will just absolutely annihilate the other, and there's nothing either player could do about it. But I do think it's tricky to play because Cabal Therapy is incredibly important, and which card to name is extremely crucial. And any slight mistake can just mean you lose. So the games often look very lopsided one way or the other because, well, you're losing life total in chunks of 12, and that's in the games that you lose. And then in the games you win, you are dismantling your opponent's hand, but they're always potentially just a couple steps away from producing a lethal threat. I made another one of these videos about the Moneyball versus Sly matchup. Even though the Dreadnought matchup is better, I think it's harder to play, and I find it to be more challenging in a way, if that makes sense, than playing against Sly. I feel like playing against Sly is like pretty straightforward. Assuming, you have the cards in your deck that you would want, then you'll have a good matchup, and if you don't, you won't. Once you understand the basics of how to play against it, which I described in the last video. Against Dreadnought, I think it's a lot trickier because their deck is full of blue instants and they draw a bunch of cards. So they have a lot of counterplay, like Foil Daze, obviously, Counterspell, but also Misdirection, Flash of Insight can be challenging to know how to play around. I mean, if you can get rid of their graveyard, that's the easiest way, but Flash of Insight can load up their hand at the end of your turn, and then they draw a card for their turn, and if they draw Gush, you can never totally be safe against Dreadnought, I guess is what I'm trying to say. But the cards in the deck are pretty good at cutting off their outs over the course of the game just by pressuring their life total and or their hand. And sometimes they'll assemble it, but they won't have the sufficient protection for it because you have discard all their cards and that kind of thing. So, or draw an extra with Graveborn Muse sometimes. So yeah, the only other thing to note, I guess, is about mulliganing. I still thinking over the proper mulligan heuristics, and in this particular challenge, I had some really good hands, so I didn't have to make that many hard choices. But I guess the mulligan heuristic I'm referring to is people might think like, oh, well, you just have to mulligan to a removal spell. I don't actually agree with that. I think you can do more harm than good by taking that approach. If you have some kind of disruption, like a duress or Cabal Therapy, I think it can be okay to keep a hand without a removal spell. You have a lot of them in your deck. You have disruption to theoretically delay the opponent from getting a Dreadnought. And if you happen to have like a turn 1 Hypnotic Spectre, that's a pretty good threat. I mean, that's repeated disruption. You just need to not die to a 12/12 right away. So, you know, it's case by case kind of thing. But I guess what I'm getting at is I don't like overly aggressively mulliganing in this matchup, because one of the reasons Dreadnought is so good is that it can just beat you with its card advantage over the course of a game. So if you're mulliganing and, okay, great, you found a removal spell, but you mulled to 5 and you have no threats, the Dreadnought deck can definitely beat such a draw, and it's not that hard either. So you have to present a balanced attack and not lose all your cards that you would need in order to fight through the card advantage in the form of gush and whatnot that Dreadnought can produce. I guess the other interesting thing is when to try and force them to use their gush. Like there are a few cases where if I had maybe therapied earlier when they only had 2 lands out, there was sort of a trade-off of, well, I could therapy, they might gush in response, then I won't know any cards in their hand, but I will also set them back 2 lands, and you know they can't produce a Dreadnought if they don't have 2 mana available. So that's something to keep in mind as well. And then there was that last match where I played Ravenous Rats to try and be mana efficient, but left myself open to them top decking the other half of the combo, which they did, and then I had no removal for it. So these are things to keep in mind when playing the matchup. It's a tricky matchup, but it is definitely in our favor overall. That's one of the draws to playing this deck, and it's very satisfying to beat a bunch of Dreadnought players because, you know, they're the bad guy as far as I'm concerned. So if you enjoyed watching the video and the analysis, please leave a comment, like, or subscribe. Maybe I'll do some more of these for other matchups. And yeah, thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.